Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, there are no regrets tonight. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, none are showing. Would two of us like to move and second us into Committee of the Whole? Councillor McNeese and Councillor Lischina, thank you. Any objection to that? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that carries. There are three consent items in front of us tonight. I'd look for a motion on the consent. Councillor Hazatiel, thank you. We only need, sorry, Councillor Hazatiel.
We'd like to separate out 4.3.
All righty. Am I getting a motion from you for 4.1 and 4.2?
Sure.
Thank you. Any objection? There being none, Councillor Hazatiel's motion for 4.1 and 4.2 carries. Councillor Hazatiel, you have the floor.
We have a delegation on 4.3. I'd like to hear from her and then have an opportunity to consider a motion.
Very well. Madam Clerk, would you call the registered delegation?
Jane Hockrig.
Welcome, Ms. Hockrig. Council looks forward to your information.
Welcome. Mayor and members of council.
Thank you so much for that.
My name is Jane Hockrig. I'm here before you this evening on consent item 4.3, the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District process update. I've been authorized by the OLRA board to represent the OLRA as a member of our Heritage Working Group. From the very outset, OLRA has been committed to a collaborative partnership approach to ensure that the necessary detailed work and analysis was completed to develop a strong and defensible Old Oakville Heritage District plan and guidelines that protects and preserves the area's cultural heritage value. When I spoke to you just 3 months ago in February 2024, it was to share OLRA's support for the approval of the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation Study, Phase 1 of the district plan updating process. I noted that this was a critical milestone achievement that OLRA supported as an active stakeholder who rolled up her sleeves and completed a significant body of work along with town staff that contributed to that study. At that time, I indicated that OLRA was committed to continuing our collaboration moving into Phase 2. In our view, Phase 2 has always been critical. We have to get it right. The development of a strong and defensible Old Oakville Heritage District plan and guidelines that incorporates best practices and focuses on protecting and preserving the attributes of this unique cultural heritage landscape is key. It's a cultural heritage landscape this town has recognized as a significant asset. When members of the OLRA working group met with Sue Shepard on April 16th to begin the process of providing detailed input on the first draft of the Old Oakville Heritage District plan, we all, heritage staff included, agreed that the plan was completely inadequate as written and required a significant rewrite, almost a need to start from scratch. The issues were not formatting or small errors. The issues were significant, including policy matters and missing best practices. We do want to put on the record our concern about the proposed timing and next steps outlined in the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District process update that is before you for consent tonight, including and in particular the proposed statutory public meeting for June 24th. As of today, May 21st, town staff still do not have an updated second draft from the consultants, and we've been told that the town is out of money for further revisions. Given our experience with completing step 1, the study, we are very concerned that the second draft of the district plan will also require rework. This is my binder for the first district plan. I'm known as the sticky person. You'll see there's lots of stickies. So there is significant work required. Being hopeful that the second draft is better does not lend us any confidence. It's our understanding that the proposed June 24th public meeting requires 20 days notice with the updated second draft. By our calendar, that means it goes out the first week of June, and that's just 2 weeks away, and we haven't seen the draft yet. We don't feel that it's reasonable to expect the public, including OLRA, to review this very important document and be ready to share our informed comments and input at the public meeting on June 24th, particularly if the second draft needs extensive revision. We are committed to continue volunteering our time with the town to get Phase 2 right. This is critical for ensuring that the special character of this area is retained for now and for future generations. However, we can't be jammed. This process needs some time and it needs some money. We are confident that the town can still meet a fall target for completion. Would it not be better to suggest that we take the next updated draft, roll up our sleeves like we have consistently demonstrated for the last 2 years to get this right, to then go to Heritage Oakville and to hold a public meeting with a draft that is more tighter to what we're wanting to see and doesn't waste public time redoing it? We believe that there's a possibility that this could all be completed by early September and come to council for approval in October. We hope that this suggestion for timing as well as funding is given due consideration so that by the time it gets to council for approval in the fall, we're all aligned. We're celebrating the completion and update to the Old Oakville Heritage District Plan, a strong and defensible plan that sets the framework for protecting, preserving, and effectively managing change that is compatible with and sympathetic to this specific cultural heritage area. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing information. I assure you, council shares those objectives. Councillor Hazatiel, you had a question for staff? Or Councillor Giddings, your hand is up rather than hers, but pardon me, because
we could put the mic.
I looked at who said it before I looked at the screen. Councillor
Put the
Giddings.
mic between us. Where'd Jane go? Oh, no, I just wanted to thank you very much and for the working group from the OLRA yeoman's work. No, my question is for staff. I had talked briefly with Susan Shepard about it. I don't believe she's here tonight, so if we have another, perfect. Thanks.
Mr. Bigger, what can you add to this?
Through you, Mayor Burton. Was there a question there, Councillor Giddings? Happy to discuss.
Yes, in terms of timing and how to move forward so that we can get it through per plan, but make sure that what we have going through is fulsome and accurate and is the finished product.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The staff report sets out a process we feel will get us to that end line. We have a draft report that's due back to staff to be read and released in advance of the 20-day notice period. So that'll give 20 days plus for the statutory public meeting and to prepare for that. We feel also the report has landed quite well with the community, and we've had a lot of great input on it. And we feel that if there are outstanding concerns that haven't been addressed in the next draft to come forward, that the statutory public meeting would be a great place for those comments to come forward for all of council.
All right, thank you for that. I guess my concern, or the residents' concern that we share, is there an off-ramp if we don't have the ability to get to that finished product?
Oh, through you, Mr. Chair, I believe there's always an off-ramp, and this item tonight is really setting out that process. And if we run into some difficulty along the way, we can revisit that issue. And I think the stat public meeting again is a good spot for that.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Giddings, is that it? Yes. Councillor Dudek.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Baker, can you just tell me what the rush is in terms of these deadlines? To my way of thinking, given the amount of effort, both by staff and the community that's gone into this, we don't have a deadline, do we, in terms of meeting something at the OLT or anything of that nature?
Through you, Mayor Burton, there is no rush.
Okay.
There is no deadline. It's staff's view that the product is ready to go to a stat public meeting, and so that's what we would be comfortable bringing forward at this time. The project has gone on longer than anticipated and certainly is over budget compared to what was originally planned. So we're trying to manage that as well and to bring something forward that council will be pleased with.
Okay, so is there something perhaps that council can do to assist you, staff, and the residents in order to come to a great resolution, i.e. a bit more time and money if warranted? It is extremely important, this Old Oakville Heritage District, as I'm sure you've commented on numerous times. And I commend Ms. Shappert for all the work she's put into it. She's done just a marvelous job, especially working with the residents. I think it's a shame to rush it at this point. If we can give people the comfort that they have that time in which to review, comment. We're getting close to summer. A lot of people are going to be away. And it would be a shame that they would feel that they're not provided an opportunity to comment and participate. So maybe you could give some consideration as to an ask that council might be able to consider in terms of additional funding supporting you with staff time.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. I think we all share the same thoughts around having a great conservation district planning guidelines. Our view is that the second draft coming out will have plenty of time to be reviewed by our stakeholders and our participants, and we can bring that, if there are outstanding concerns still, to that stat public meeting, and if at that point we're still needing more time and to take that off ramp and to find another path, we can look at that when we hear it from the broader group on that draft plan. We do have Heritage Oakville in the summer, and we'll be coming back in the fall. So there's still other steps along the way for input to be provided and for revisions to occur.
Councillor Hazzathiel.
Thank you, Mr. Bicker. I guess my concern is that this is a group of individuals that put a huge amount of time in last summer. They're committed to giving us more volunteer time, and I think their ask is one that's reasonable. If we'd had a deadline that we had to achieve, then I would understand, but if there's the opportunity to even move it to P&D in July, so that there's greater time for them to give you one fulsome set of revisions for you, that may actually be more cost effective with the consultant as well, because you've got it all at once rather than two steps. They do a shorter review, you get all this feedback on June 24th, and then you got more to do. What do you need from us to potentially move that to a P&D meeting in July?
Through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you. So just conferring here with Mr. Charles, we could move the stat public meeting into July as a way of providing a little more time for the review of the draft document that's coming forward. There is normally we don't really have stat public meetings in the summer, but in this case, we'll get a good period of review done in advance of July 1st, and then we can move forward there.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Bigger, do you need council to defer or amend this proposal to make the stat meeting in July?
Yeah, we can, through you, Mayor Burton, we'll just take that as direction to come back in July.
I'm good with that. Everybody's good? Everybody's good. Councillor Hazzathiel, then I guess I'll look to you for the 4.3 motion to approve. Any objection? There being none, that's carried. Thanks, everybody. We have no confidential consent items, and we have 5 public hearings. So now, the way a public hearing works, item works is we're here to identify the issues that we want staff to evaluate later when they bring a recommendation report. We're not making a decision on the proposal tonight. So arguing that it's bad and we don't like it isn't as useful as identifying the issue that it offends and that staff need to work on, so that there's a material element in the recommendation report later that addresses the actual issue rather than an argument tonight. And then everybody still gets to argue later after the recommendation report. And sometimes that happens too. We have a phone number for those watching at home who want to also contribute to this discussion. And I've just been handed the number. It is 905-815-6095. And you'll be connected to the meeting, and you'll be placed in queue with the other registered delegations. On our first public meeting report, this is the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for Spruce Rose. We have our staff, Azab Riaz, here to answer questions. And we have delegations. We have 6 delegations. I understand that the delegations are chained together, not literally, but figuratively. And Madam Clerk, would you call the delegations in order? I understand they prefer this order.
The first is Adrian Chi, and he's an agent representing the owner.
Oh, he might not be part of the chained delegations. Mr. Chi, we look forward to your information too.
Mr. Chi, staff will advance the slides for you.
Oh, okay, thank you. May I start? Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Adrian Chi from SGL Planning and Design, Inc., and I'm here today with Paul Lowe's, my colleague from SGL Planning, to help out with any questions, and we represent Spruce Rose, Inc., the owners of 304-318 Spruce Street. We are here today to present and answer any questions regarding our proposed zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision to permit the creation of 7 detached dwelling units on the subject lands. Next slide, please. The subject lands are located just south of Midtown Oakville on the southeast corner of Reynolds Street and Spruce Street. It is also just north of the Oakville Trafalgar Community Center, a place of worship and a single detached dwelling with a detached garage currently occupies the subject lands. It is noted that the church is no longer operating and the site has been fenced off with the exception of the detached dwelling unit. Next slide, please. We are proposing 7 two-story detached dwellings, 4 of which will front Spruce Street and 3 will front Reynolds Street. Each dwelling will have an attached double-car garage within the building itself. Next slide, please. The subject lands are designated low-density residential and permits detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, and duplexes, all with a density of up to 29 dwelling units per site hectare. Our proposal creates 7 detached units, resulting in a density of 17.1 units per site hectare, and so no official plan amendment is required as part of this application. Next slide, please. The subject lands are zoned entirely community use and permits place of worship, food bank, daycare, school, and more. A zoning bylaw amendment is required to permit the residential use and establish site-specific provisions for the proposed development. We are proposing a residential low 5 zone with special provisions to reduce the minimum front yards for lots 1, 2, and 3, which are along Reynolds Street, to 6 meters, and increase the maximum lot coverage for lots 1 and 2, which are the southern 2 most lots on Reynolds Street, to 44%. Next slide, please. Our draft plan of subdivision proposes 7 single detached lots, 1 daylight triangle block, and maintaining of an existing easement to the south. So the easement is shown on this draft plan of subdivision in the hatched with the teardrop bulb south of the site. Next slide, please. Soft front and rear yard landscaping are proposed to enhance the public realm as well as increase the site canopy cover and provide opportunities for new street trees. Pavers are proposed for the driveways to reduce surface runoff, and tree protection fencing is proposed for the existing site trees. Next slide, please. A public information meeting was previously held on September 19, 2023. Our response to the questions received are as follows. In terms of zoning provisions such as lot depth, lot width, and front and side yard requirements, the proposed development will be generally consistent with the RL5 zone provisions through a zoning bylaw amendment is required for front yard and lot coverage. The proposed lot coverage ranges from 30.5% to 43.9%. In terms of height, the proposed height will be below the maximum requirement of the RL5 zone of 12 meters. In terms of benefits and impacts to residents, the proposed development represents an improvement to an underutilized church and parking lot. The separation between Lot 1 and the south property line has also been increased from 1.2 meters to 2.1 meters. In terms of the timing of development, it will be approximately 2 to 3 years before construction begins, depending on the approvals process. In terms of design, the style and massing of the proposed dwellings have been designed in accordance with the town's urban design guidelines, though the facades will vary as per the renderings. Next slide, please. The proposed traditional architectural style, as shown, is intended to complement the existing character of the neighborhood, and the facade designs will all vary and align with the town's urban design guidelines. The top image depicts the 3 lots along Reynolds Street, and the bottom image depicts the 4 lots along Spruce Street, including the corner lot, which fronts Reynolds and flanks Spruce Street. Next slide, please. In conclusion, we are requesting a zoning bylaw amendment and a draft plan of subdivision to permit the residential use and the proposed built form for 7 two-story single detached homes, and no official plan amendments are required as part of this application. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your information. Council, have you any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, Councilor Hazardale, I beg your pardon.
Thank you for your presentation. Just 2 quick questions. You mentioned tree protection. Can you just perhaps reflect on how many trees are you actually preserving on this site?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mayor Burton. So out of the 43 regulated trees on site, we are going to preserve 10 of those trees. And in addition, we are compensating for the replanting of 65 of those trees on site as well.
So I want to make sure I heard you correctly. We have 43. We're
Yes.
going to only save 10 of them. And then how many more are you going to put on?
65 to compensate.
Okay, all right. And the other question I just have is, in terms of Reynolds, you're asking for exceptions.
Yep.
Was there any consideration of smaller buildings?
I will defer this question to my colleague, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Councillor, through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the marketing by the client, the larger buildings on the site are preferable, which because of these lots are still a little over 30 meters in depth, so over a little 100 feet in depth, they would require the more higher lot frontage. The frontage, the reduction in frontage is really just to create a little difference from the garage to the front entranceway. So it allows for that a little bit of change in the front, so it's not all one straight, but there's still a porch in the front of it to give that facade that is changed facade from the street. So it's quite a minor change from the 6 to the from the 7.5. 7.5 meters required is to the front of the garage, so it's just that small portion that's the entranceway that would be sticking out a little closer to that 6 meters. Coverage, though, is required because of the larger size that people want for new homes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk, thank you, Mr. Chief. Would you call the delegations chained or otherwise?
Jeremy Hammond.
Welcome, Mr. Hammond. Council looks forward to the start of your presentation.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. As you know, I represent one of a number of concerned residents in a delegation. And we're here tonight to present what we feel are serious concerns about the proposed development. I'm going to introduce those concerns. I should add that we're all residents in the neighborhood. I've lived next door to the church site for a little over 10 years, in the area for 12 years. And many residents in the area of Spruce Street and Reynolds Street, I think, are quite concerned about both the precedent and the nature of the proposed development. I think in introducing those concerns, I'll just say that we and my family have a great love of the neighborhood, the area. We have young children, and there's just a lot to like about living there. We understand, though, that the church is going through a change of use. We understand that the site will be developed, and I think we, and I know you'll hear from the other delegates, we do understand the need to adapt and grow and reasonably accept the changes that come with community development over time. So I don't think you'll hear from us an aversion to change, an aversion to redevelopment. But having said that, we do not understand this proposal. And we want to remind everyone and raise that there are reasons for the planning policies that exist in Oakville. Those reasons matter, both in letter and in spirit, and they really matter to the neighbors of the church site. They matter at the local level, and we feel they matter to the character and livability of the community as a whole. We also feel that this is not a box-ticking exercise. There are numerous documents associated with this proposal, but proposals mean something, and the spirit in which they're submitted and what they say also means something. This development will have a real and permanent impact on the streets in question and on the families who live there. And they create the precedent that defines the future of the community as well. So we feel that the town has done an admirable job of upholding that over time. But I have, with me an analysis that is almost laughable in going through claims from some of the documents in this proposal, that the proposal fits into low-density character, that it's in good keeping with the heritage requirements and policies, architectural precedents, that it's in keeping with lot and setback patterns, will not generate excess traffic, will be complementary, preserve trees, and the list goes on. We feel strongly that the designs as proposed are not compatible and in fact are contradictory to the Livable Oakville Plan and the Urban Design Manual. In fact, in some cases, the developer's claims contradict even within their own documents. So maybe to sum it up, we feel that this is irreconcilable both with the spirit and purpose of the Livable Oakville Plan and Design Manual. We feel it is not reconcilable with the community and the impact on the community. And I think we feel it's not even a sincere intent by the developer to propose something that's in character and in alignment with the existing neighborhood, nor a sincere attempt to solicit feedback and take into the consideration some of the things that have been raised by the neighbors already. So the big question for us really is why? Why would the developer propose something so out of keeping, so inconsistent? And why would the town even consider something that goes so far versus being quite open to something that would be more reasonable and more consistent with the principles of the neighborhood and with the planning integrity of the town of Oakville? So we look forward to sharing more of our views, and we do ask that staff and council respectfully consider our thoughts. Thank you for your time.
Before you run, let me give you the answer to your last question about why the town would consider it. The province of Ontario, the laws of our province require us to consider any application, even if it's night and day away from our official plan. And our official plan then guides our analysis of it and informs our decision and the staff's recommendation. So a recommendation from staff is not a foregone conclusion, but consideration of all applications is required. So,
Understood.
So I don't think it's premature to be pessimistic.
Thank you.
Okay. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation? Sorry, Councillor Duddick?
Sorry. Excuse me. I
Mr.
apologize. I did have my hand up.
It's my rookie effort, I apologize.
Okay, not a
As well.
problem. Wonder if you could just provide some insight as to what you see as more compatible. Is it the number of lots? Is it the massing? What is it that you say you think is more in keeping with what the residents in the area see?
Yeah. Well, if you're okay with it, I would love to defer to the rest of the
Sure,
delegates.
that's
Because
fine.
we have put a lot of thought into this, and I think
Not a
it will address your
problem.
question.
Happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a 5-part movie. You just have to follow along. Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please.
Dan Meskel.
Mr. Maskell, welcome. We look forward to your part.
Good evening, Mayor, Councillors, Town staff. Thank you for this opportunity to express our concerns and observations for the proposed Spruce Rose subdivision at Reynolds and Spruce Street in Oakville. Dan Meskel is my name. I live at 348 Spruce Street in Oakville with my wife Rebecca and our 2 daughters. We purchased our family home 6 years ago, and the family that we purchased our home from had resided there for approximately 40 years before us. My wife Rebecca grew up in Oakville. We purchased our family home on Spruce Street because we love the community, the character and the heritage of the immediate and the surrounding neighbourhood. There's a sense of space, tranquility amongst the tree-lined streets and the appropriately sized properties and lots. My wife and I are currently undertaking a modest renovation to our family home to accommodate our growing family. We proactively engaged with the town's planning and heritage staff to ensure our proposed project was in keeping with the planning requirements and the appropriate bylaws. The town's planning and heritage staff were great to deal with during the planning and permitting process. At all times during the planning and design process, we strive to achieve and maintain conformance with the zoning designations for our community and neighbourhood, which is RL 3-0 Special Provision 10. We ensured conformance with all the specified setbacks, including front, rear and side yards, as well as the maximum height and coverage ratios. One of our project goals is to complement the character of the existing heritage components of our family home and to enhance the sense of space and tranquility within our community and neighbourhood. My wife and I believe this goal will ensure conformance with the development standards and maintain the integrity of the town of Oakville's efforts to maintain the neighbourhood heritage and character. With respect to the proposed Spruce Rose subdivision, I believe their proposed planning approach is in drastic contrast to that of our neighbours within the community. The Spruce Rose development proposal fails to conform to several key specific standards, most notably in terms of density, massing, building height, environmental impact, and the heritage feel of the neighbourhood and community. All these characteristics conflict with and undermine the key Town of Oakville planning standards, including the Livable Oakville Plan, with respect to maintaining the architectural harmony and the community fabric. I believe the current proposal by Spruce Rose has the potential to set a terrible precedence for planning within the neighbourhood and community. The Town of Oakville has established planning and zoning designations. The proposed Spruce Rose subdivision appears to disregard the town's zoning designations. The Spruce Rose proposal creates a new residential low 5 zoning within an established residential low 3 zoning. If this zoning bylaw amendment is approved, it has the potential to set a terrible precedent for developers to acquire tracts of properties within established neighbourhoods and communities and apply for zoning designation changes and thus alter the architectural harmony and community fabric in contradiction with the Livable Oakville Plan. The Spruce Rose developers took no consideration of the comments or concerns raised at the virtual public information meeting convened on September 19th, 2023. The Spruce Rose developers appear to proceed as they wish without concern for established zoning designations and planning policies. The proposed development lacks integration with the existing established neighbourhood and communities. I appreciate this is a financial venture for the Spruce Rose developers. However, this financial gain cannot come at the detriment of the existing community and neighbourhood. I would encourage the town's planning and heritage staff and councillors to hold the developers accountable to the established zoning designations, planning standards, and policies. In addition to the above point, I would also raise a significant concern with respect to health and safety of road users and pedestrians along Reynolds Street and the adjoining streets. The proposed Spruce Rose subdivision includes for 3 multi-car garage and parking areas to enter/exit onto Reynolds Street. The transportation impact analysis included in section 5.2 of the developer's planning and rationale report appears to make no reference to the vertical geometry of Reynolds Street, the appropriateness of sight lines for road users, the proximity of the existing traffic signaled intersection and traffic flow at Reynolds and MacDonald, the existing Oakville Transit bus stop, and the existing school bus stop. The proposed Spruce Rose development appears to fall short of evaluating the risk to road users and pedestrians. I would encourage the town's planning and councillors to hold the developers accountable to provide safe travel routes within our neighbourhood and community. Thank you very much for your time and consideration with these concerns and observations.
Thank you very much for bringing them. I noted what it looks like 6 issues for staff to pursue. Does that agree with your count?
Yeah, I would say as a group, we have a very extensive list of concerns with the
So
proposed.
keep writing, you're
Yeah, so
saying.
keep
Okay.
making notes.
Councillor Giddings, do you have a question for the gentleman?
Thank you for joining us this evening. I jotted down your questions and concerns as well. You went through the heritage impact assessment as part of the details on the town website, I take it?
Yes.
You mentioned you disagree with their belief that the design is sympathetic to the area, and also that the design of the homes minimize their impact on the heritage district. There was a third point, I didn't catch it. It was talking about the designs of the proposed single detached homes are in keeping with general good heritage design practices. Did you refer to that one as well?
I think in general, I have a feeling that the proposal that's put in front of us is very vague. It's not site specific. It hasn't been thoroughly thought out for the neighborhood. And I sense it is more of a testing the waters for a developer to see if there is a precedence to change zoning designations within established neighborhoods and communities. There's a lot of documents published on the website. I would say you have to read between the lines on some of the documents that are published. A lot of this, I have a sense that is a precedence testing case rather than a sincere and genuine development proposal.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you call the next in the chain?
That would be Sue Chalikoff.
Welcome, Ms. Chalikoff. We look forward to your information.
Great, thank you very much for the opportunity. So I'm going to speak from my perspective. I'm a 3rd generation in Oakville. My grandparents raised the funds for the original OT hospital, 1 block south of this development on Reynolds, which is now demolished. That's where they died and where my children were born. We've had 2 generations of my family attending the OT high school, which was 2 blocks south of this development, mostly demolished as well. I've lived on Reynolds Street for 23 years, and I am directly across from the 3 lots proposed on Reynolds Street. The changes I am seeing proposed are very troubling. I have a small 100-year-old cottage bungalow within the Trafalgar Road Heritage District that forms the western boundary of this development, and my neighborhood is not recognizable. I attended the developer's information session 8 months ago, it was alluded to earlier, where we were shown the concept plan and elevations, and we were assured that these plans were just preliminary and that our input was part of the process, And I am saddened to see that despite having documented 7 pages of community input, there was no visible change that I could see to any part of the proposal from the developer since 8 months ago. This does not speak well about the developer's concerns about the impact their proposal will have on the community, whose members took their time to provide constructive input to help to try to make an acceptable proposal. So today we're, again, reiterating the same kind of comments and feedback that we mentioned 8 months ago. Specifically, the items that I would like to address as part of this multi-part delegation is about zoning and the actual sizes of the buildings proposed. So this development property, it resides within an established community of properties with the zoning residential low 3-0 special provision 10, as mentioned already. And just to reiterate, this zoning includes 10-meter minimum lot frontage, 9-meter maximum height to the top of the property, top of the building, and 19% maximum lot coverage. This parcel of land is directly in the middle of a block of properties with this zoning that extends all around, like multiple blocks. The developer has seemed to introduce a brand new zone, RL5, that does not align with the direct context in which it resides. And it contradicts, in my view, the town's livable by design guidelines. This proposal would require further zoning exceptions, even with the RL5, to implement the massing for the new buildings on these small property sizes. One example is the lot frontage. I looked up on one of our town tools the average lot frontage on the 11 properties adjacent to and directly across from this development. And the average of the 11 properties, including mine as an example, is over 24 meters. The proposed lots in this development are from 14 to 17 meters. So 24 is the average, and they're proposing between 14 and 17. The neighborhood prevailing zoning, which is the RL30, requires 18-meter frontage, and the RL5 is 15 meters. So if this zoning is approved, the new lot frontages will be about 40% smaller than the average of the immediate neighbors. So 40% to me feels like something that is not in line with the neighborhood and the community in which it resides. Another example is maximum height. The existing neighborhood zoning has a 9-meter height max. The proposed heights of up to 12 meters does not comply with the town's livable design guidelines, in my view. There is also a grade increase, or a small hill. I know it because my dog runs up it every time I go up that hill, which is on Reynolds Street moving east towards the church. So from the sidewalk moving east, it goes up a hill, and that's where the new properties will be. This will add a visual height to these new buildings, and my understanding is the height of a building is calculated based on the elevation at the front of the lot frontage, so that will have to be included in the calculations of height, in my understanding. This height of the new buildings will be noticeable to pedestrians. It's a very narrow sidewalk on Reynolds Street, and with the very shallow setbacks of the buildings, it will be imposing and feel crowded on this busy street. We're requesting, as a group of neighbors, to see 3 street elevation sections that would run east-west, a section across Reynolds Street showing the building height of the proposed homes on these lots 1, 2, and 3 that include the grade change and should also include, for reference, the existing building heights of the home on the west side of Reynolds for scale. The building heights on Reynolds, directly opposite the new lots are bungalows. So my property and the building to the north of me were both bungalows. We're very low buildings, and I would like to see this visually in a section. This is a very standard architectural drawing. We also request to see a plan view running north-south from McDonald to Maple, including the properties on east and west of Reynolds that show the lot frontage and the existing building setbacks compared to the proposal. These are like the block diagrams, where you can see the building is just blocked out, and you can see where it would sit compared to the front lot line. This will allow proper comparison of the existing neighborhood to the new development and will help offer insights into the issues of crowding, real day-to-day things that I think about: where to place the garbage, where will you pile the snow when you have those big snowfalls, after they've plowed the sidewalk where there's no boulevard, and that snow has to go somewhere, and these are very narrow lots with double driveways. Where do you put all the snow? Overall, we're recommending that the zoning align with the block in which it's situated, which is RL3 SP10, RL30 SP10, and we'd like to see a revised proposal that uses 5 lots instead of 7 to more appropriately fit the frontage criteria of the zone and the neighborhood. We recommend the building height be limited to comply with RL3-0, which is 9 meters, to more appropriately align with the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's very detailed. And I thank you for the pace you went at. I got them all down, which gives me confidence that staff did.
Okay. Are there any questions?
It doesn't look like it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegate.
Cody Cornell.
Mr. Cornell, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to present. My name's Cody Cornally. I live at 375 Reynolds Street. I live there with my wife, Caitlin, my 2 twins, and our newborn 2-week-old daughter, who's actually here taking in her first council meeting at the back, baby Sloan. So we're not as long-term residents as Sue and some of the other delegates, but we've been here since the fall. We moved into the neighborhood and we love it. And I'm trying to come at this from a bit of a different perspective as an adjacent homeowner. And so I know one of the things that the council considers and takes into account with the proposed development is the impact on adjacent properties. I echo all of the concerns that have been very well summarized and detailed by my fellow delegates thus far concerning the appropriateness of the development proposal. Thank you. As it relates to the zoning, lot coverages, the height of the structures that are being proposed, among other things. There are currently 2 properties on the east side of Reynolds between Reynolds Street and Spruce, or excuse me, McDonald and Spruce, our property and our neighbor to the south. Both of these properties have similar frontages onto Reynolds Street, 20.7 meters and 23.7 meters. Both have the same depth, 26.5 meters. The proposed development, by utilizing RL5 zoning, would have 3 additional lots put onto Reynolds Street between our property and Spruce Street, with frontages of 14 meters for lot 1, which is immediately adjacent to my lot, and 14 meters and 16.26 meters for lots 2 and 3 as you move northwards towards Spruce Street. By making the lots very narrow so as to crowd the 3 properties into the limited space on Reynolds Street, the proposed lots are also not surprisingly much deeper than the adjacent lots. In effect, the proposal calls for what I would describe as 3 bowling ball lane lots on Reynolds Street that are far narrower, far deeper than the adjacent properties, and which in turn require the lots proposed on Spruce Street to also be inappropriately narrow for the zoning in the entire neighborhood. In conjunction with these much narrower, deeper lots, the proposal contains lot coverages of 44% for lots 1 and 2 on Reynolds Street. The practical effect, in my opinion, of the excessive lot coverage with narrow lots is that the houses that are then being proposed to be built on the Reynolds Street lots would go all the way back to the very end of my property line and my neighbor to the south. So my backyard would effectively have a 12-meter high retaining wall to the north, which would significantly interfere with my family's use and enjoyment of our backyard, would detract from property value, and not to mention the privacy issues. In my view, there's a very good reason why towns and cities have zoning bylaws in place. It's so that someone can't just come in and build their house 5 feet from the curb when the rest of the setbacks on the street are 20 feet, or that someone can't just come in and put an addition onto the back of their house that runs all the way back to the very end of a property line. I don't see why a development should be able to run roughshod over the zoning that's long been in place in a neighborhood so as to maximize its profits at the expense of other homeowners' property value. Zoning laws would not allow me to do that to my neighbors, and so the same laws should not be ignored so as to allow development to do that to me or to anyone else. Additionally, I also think that adding 3 driveway entrances onto Reynolds Street presents a significant traffic issue and safety concerns. Reynolds Street's already fairly busy, with people frequently racing to beat the traffic light at McDonald and Reynolds. I know that all too well in the short time that I've been there. And I can attest to how much caution is required backing out of my driveway and how long it can sometimes take, especially during busier times of the day. As an individual with a young family, 3 children under 3, adding 3 driveway entrances in such a condensed space would dramatically heighten the safety issues and traffic flow problems that, in my opinion, are already existing. I'll end by adding that, from my perspective, I believe that good development, if done properly and in a manner that's consistent with the zoning and the character of the rest of the neighborhood, can be a positive thing. The key phrase, though, in my opinion, is good development. My wife and I moved to the current neighborhood that we're in Oakville, from our previous home in downtown Burlington in the past fall, because we got to experience firsthand what it's like when development goes unchecked. The character of the neighborhoods were destroyed, traffic became a real problem, among other issues. One of the major reasons we chose to move to our current neighborhood is because the city of Oakville, in our opinion, has historically done a fantastic job of preserving the character of the neighborhoods, and especially in the downtown core. In my view, the neighborhood is defined by its mature trees and the uniqueness of each home, both heritage properties and newly built and renovated homes that have done a fantastic job adhering to the overall character of the neighborhood. We didn't buy into this neighborhood because we wanted to live in a subdivision, and in my view, the development as proposed, the character of it, and the form of it is much more consistent in keeping with the character of a subdivision than it is the current neighborhood's character. So thank you for your time. Those are my submissions.
Thank you for your presentation. Madam Clerk, the next, Councillor Hazeltine, would you like to call the delegate back?
Sorry about that.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on
Thank you.
baby 3. So just to visualize, so the property right beside you that they proposed to build would go right to the back of your lot line?
Yes.
Okay. And at 12 meters in the zoning bylaw, that's a 12-meter wall.
Yes, it's the best description I can give it to be like having a 12-meter retaining wall on the north side of the property, because it goes right to the end of the property line. It would be straight wall up.
Okay. And the distance on your property from your garage to the road is what?
I don't quote me on it. I don't know exactly what that distance would be.
Okay, I think you said something around 20.7.
Oh, the width, the frontage.
The frontage is 20.7.
The frontage, 20.7 meters.
And then the depth of the driveway?
The depth from the front to the back is 26, and it's for both my lot and the neighbor to the south. They're both 87 feet deep, so I think that converts to 26.5 meters approximately in depth.
So I've been by your house a few times. So coming out of that driveway, you're faced with challenges already.
Yeah, it's challenging. We do have a 2-car or a 2-wide driveway. I know the proposal calls for 2-wide driveways. That's especially challenging, especially if you have 2 cars backed up, because there's also sidewalk and pedestrian traffic. It's not just the vehicles. Vehicles tend to pick up a decent amount of speed down Reynolds. I would say it's a much faster through street than some of the cross streets like Spruce or Shedden or any of the other ones that run east-west. So yeah, Reynolds is, you have to be careful both of the vehicle traffic, but also the pedestrians, and especially if you're proposing in driveways that have the 2 cars, it's even more dangerous, because if you're backing out and there's 2 cars back, it really cuts off your line of sight and your vision to Reynolds Street. And in busy times, like in the morning rush hour or coming back, like, you know, in 5:30 time frame, getting in and out of the driveway can take some time, and you just have to go slow about it and not be in a rush.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that additional clarification.
Certainly.
Madam Clerk.
Worship,
next-
I have a question.
I'm sorry. Councillor Chisholm.
Sorry, I'm slow on the finger here getting this on. McDonald and Reynolds Street. Isn't there a setback of a line because the turning radius on that corner is almost impossible to get around? It's set back probably about, what, 5 meters from the
In
corner?
terms of stopping at that light,
Yep.
yes, there is a decent setback there.
Is there a problem with that when you pull out on a blind spot?
There can be, and there can also be a problem with traffic backing up in busier times, so you can't get out of the driveway.
Good.
So that can also create an issue as well.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Madam Clerk, maybe now.
Jim Lawson.
Mr. Lawson, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Burton and council. My wife Sue and I moved into the Spruce Street neighborhood 38 years ago. There have been many changes over nearly 4 decades. The neighborhood has been steadfastly protected by versions of this council and Mayor Burton for many years. They're on the Spruce Street block between, many of you are very familiar with this neighborhood, between Reynolds and Allen. There are 18 homes. During our 38 years living there, 13 of those homes have been either rebuilt or had major renovations, 13 of 18. We have never objected once, and there's never been much more than a minor variance. This is my first time at this council. And so the proposal for the plan of subdivision that we're speaking about tonight is very different for a host of reasons that this neighborhood has already outlined to you. They've done an excellent job of addressing that this proposal is non-compliant in almost every respect to the current zoning bylaw affecting Spruce Street and a number of planning considerations. The proponent recently submitted a document entitled Planning Rationale Report, which, starting at page 23, spends nearly 4 pages associating this land with provincial policy. The report goes on in its executive summary on page 42 to double down on its rationalization and reference to provincial policies twice in its conclusion. In my view, this is a disingenuous attempt to exceed zoning restrictions in nearly every aspect, to cram 7 lots into an historic neighborhood and attempt to rationalize doing so based on provincial policy. Please don't let us go down this path. There is no logic in such rationale and not the type of densification that the province is advocating. Sound planning principles should never be ignored. I've personally been working on a transit-oriented community for the last 7 years between the City of Toronto, with the City of Toronto and the province. I can tell you firsthand intensification that the province does not support intensification at the cost of poor planning. The province will go out of its way to respect official plans and related zoning bylaws. It has recently turned over responsibility at the provincial level for transit-oriented communities to the Minister of Infrastructure to ensure that proper considerations are given and the provincial government is respectful of the requirements of the municipal authorities. Under this umbrella, the developers and its various consultants have thrown responsible and prudent planning aside and failed to address important issues of safety, infrastructure, environment, and the important planning principle, which I hope we never lose in Oakville: consistency with the character of the neighborhood. As Mr. Hammond described at the outset of this movie, the developer has checked technical boxes without addressing the implications of the proposal. Unfortunately, this same approach has been adopted for 2 critical issues which the town must adopt as material concerns regarding the viability of this proposal. Firstly, the developer has checked the box by delivering an arborist report from Greenprint Consulting Arborists dated April 2023. The report outlines that in order for the development to proceed as contemplated by the proposed plan, there will need to be 11 trees destroyed and one other will incur injury. These are not just any trees, and many of you are familiar with the neighborhood. Of those 11 trees, all of which are 80 to 100 years old and average approximately 100 feet in height. Think about that. That consideration alone should stop all of us in our tracks. To give you an idea of the size of these beautiful trees, town policy technically requires the developer to plant 65 trees to replace the 11 that will be destroyed. Replacement or checking this box is not what is at stake here. We all, including, I submit, Rosehaven Homes, cannot stand idly by and watch 11 stately and historic trees be chopped down, all in the interest of having double lane driveways on more lots. It is submitted that if there is only 4 to 5 lots approved in accordance with permitted zoning, then at least 7 of these 100-year-old trees will be saved. Chopping down trees is not progress. And let me reiterate, not what the province had in mind as it encourages densification. The second very important concern, which also suffers from a check-the-box mentality, is the traffic study submitted as part of the proposal. Crozier Consulting Engineers submitted a report to the town dated December 15th, 2023, and is inadequate in as much as it does not address the glaring issues raised by this proposal. The scope of the Crozier traffic report was limited by the developer to 2 items. 1, spacing between driveways, and 2, access to the intersection. The study does not address sight lines for access to the sidewalks and roads, traffic volumes, sight distances, speed, and turning radius, especially for the 3 proposed lots on Reynolds. This is compounded by the fact that the developers have inserted wide driveways which places cars side by side and thereby further will restrict the turning radius as these people try and back out onto Reynolds Street. The town's proposed midtown development will dramatically increase the north-south traffic, pedestrian and vehicular. And the increased traffic flow with cars backing across Reynolds will create a dangerous traffic environment. Crozier references the standards in the Geometric Design Guide for Canadian roads, yet they failed to bring to the town a traffic assessment study. This is standard in the consideration of a new plan of subdivision. Further, the sight distances and horizontal and vertical curves are inputs which have not been studied. On this point, I have every expectation that an independent traffic and driveway study will conclude the driveway configurations and numbers cannot be recommended, particularly as they relate to Reynolds Street. There is no sound planning rationale for letting this development proceed as proposed. To what end is achieved by letting it proceed in the manner proposed? It is not legally compliant in almost every respect. It has failed to recognize the dangerous safety environment of effectively 6 lanes of driveways backing onto Reynolds Street, which is already overly busy and dangerous north-south corridor and promises, as we know, to get worse. I think that's for later this meeting. The all-important character of the neighborhood has been ignored, including by the demolition of 11 stately trees, the hallmark of the neighborhood. There is a reasonable solution to all of this, which is to develop 4 to 5 lots largely in compliance with the existing zoning. That is doing what is right here and what a good corporate citizen in our community should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. I think you mentioned Rosehaven, but I wasn't aware this was Rosehaven. I thought this was Spruce Rose. Is that right?
Spruce Rose.
Okay. It's okay. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
And in case Rosehaven's listening, I wanted to make sure.
My mistake.
I wanted to make sure they didn't go into high alarm. All right, thank you very much for your information.
Your Worship,
Mr. Chisholm, Councillor Chisholm.
I do apologize because my computer's not working and you can't see on screen. So it's just, your comments are very specific with respect to the traffic and so forth. Is it possible we can get your notes? If you could send us your notes, I'd like to identify those specifically and make sure we get them to our planning staff.
Yeah, no
You do
problem
that?
at all.
Thank you.
I might correct the, I'll call a typo in here. Thank you, Mayor Burton.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Hazatiel has a question for you. Councillor Chisholm, I am confident that staff have caught that, but nothing like belt and suspenders. Councillor Hazatiel.
Let's just verify that we have the information. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment that every single time when we do these, I am so impressed with the level of detail and research that comes to the podium because people know their neighborhoods. And the fact that you stood up for those trees, I applaud you, sir, because we will not get them back unless we stand up for them.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Lawson. All right. Spruce Rose is not done. We also have a delegate from DCRA, Claire Mary, I believe. Welcome, Ms. Mary. We look forward to your information.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hi. Thank you, Mayor Burton, councillors, and town staff. My name is Claire Mary, and tonight I'm here speaking on behalf of DCRA. I am also a resident of Spruce Street, and we would like to, the association would like to echo the sentiments of our local residents. So generally, we are in support of a development plan that proposes single-family dwellings while adding density to the area, aligning with growth plans at the provincial, regional, and municipal level. But as mentioned by the 5 delegates before me, there are some serious concerns about the thoughtfulness of this proposal, and I'm going to summarize them. To recap their concerns, 1, the proposal is an inappropriate zoning when compared to its surrounding neighborhood. All other houses on the block are RL3-0 SP10, with maximum coverage permitted at 19% and 9 meters in height. Any nearby RL5-0 zones are also held to a 9-meter maximum height. The development zoning request for RL5 has no special provisions, allowing for a 12-meter height, and furthermore requests additional variances for up to 44% lot coverage, so going from 19 to 44% lot coverage. I note that 3 meters more height is almost 10 feet for those who work in Imperial, and that's 10 feet more than everybody else on the block. And this subject land specifically is already starting at a higher elevation. Number 2, incompatibility with a livable Oakville plan and livable design manual. This proposal is inconsistent with the existing guidelines, density and livability considerations. 7 tightly packed mansions, because that's what they are, that will dwarf its neighbors and require 12 mature trees to be removed in the process is not in keeping with the heritage character called out in the proposal. The risk of accepting this plan is that it sets another precedent that could undermine the town's ethos regarding the integrity of the neighborhood. Number 3, traffic concerns as it relates to human and car interactions. Reynolds Street only has 1 sidewalk, and it's right next to the road, and it's only on the east side. There's no boulevard. This is where 3 of these large driveways are being proposed. With the growing popularity of our awesome new community center, plus the school bus pickup area, which is on the subject site, the Canada Post boxes, which are right nearby, 2 public transit bus stops in front of the subject site, and Reynolds being a main thoroughfare for for anyone coming from downtown to the GO or vice versa. This sidewalk is heavily traveled by active transitors of all ages. And when I say all ages, we do have a lot of young kids in the neighborhood, and I know this because they all run across my lawn in order to get to the bus stop that is on the subject site. Locals on this block have expressed the heightened importance of safe and careful entrance and exiting their driveways because of the heavy pedestrian traffic and the challenges presented by higher slope driveways and no boulevard. Both pedestrians and car traffic is expected to only get busier as future developments are completed around the community center to the south, limiting the number, and this actually could probably get worse depending on whether or not Trafalgar has to get ripped up for Midtown. Limiting the number of driveways and their parked cars blocking views on this block needs to be considered by the applicants. Number 4, adding to the last item, there is concern about unnecessary tree removal in order to accommodate larger units and the potential for 4-car driveways on each lot. This is one, so my comments here are kind of a 3 birds with 1 stone solution. Page 26 of their proposal states, as such, the proposal will encourage the use of efficient modes of transportation and minimize vehicular trips due to the subject land's proximity to existing transit infrastructure. So this being the case that they're making, why not make these units 1-car garage and single-lane driveways instead of 2-car garage with the potential space for 4 in the driveway? This would be much more in line with the heritage character that they also state, and also more in line with what is the norm in the neighborhood. It could also provide access to additional living area while helping reduce the overall lot coverage to within RL3-0 SP10. It would mean at least 7 of these 12 planned trees, and I know this because I went and I counted them out and I tried to lay it out where their proposed driveways are. 7 of these trees could be planned for removal, 7 of these trees that are currently planned for removal could be saved. Town trees T2 and T4 could be saved, and all 5 of the trees that line Reynolds could also be preserved, instead of removed for driveways, which is really what they're being removed for. These concerns of our neighbors are real and reasonable. What defines this neighborhood is its authenticity, history, and its caring inhabitants. They request that this proposal not be passed and that a scaled-down version be proposed in order to maintain the character, integrity, and the safety needs of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Quite a good summary. Any questions, Council? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Planning Director, do you want to rhyme off the issues, or one of your staff anyway, rhyme off the caught issues, and we'll make sure we all agree?
Through you, Mayor Burton, in a future recommendation report, staff will provide analysis of some of these concerns, which I'm going to list. These include compatibility with the lotting pattern of the neighborhood, tree preservation concerns, compatibility with the urban design guidelines, maintenance of the heritage character, density, massing of the proposed buildings in comparison to the existing dwellings, building heights, environmental impact, and traffic concerns. I believe these cover the topics that were discussed. Unless I've missed, I can note
Thank
more.
you. Does anyone have anything else?
Your Worship, with respect to the traffic concerns, I think there was some very detailed information that it needs to be recognized within our constituents. I think that's very important that we get into that detail.
So
the
that would
planning board
be,
should have.
you're referencing the many comments about turning radiuses out of the properties.
Yep, I will know
That's
the
correct.
training. Yeah.
Councillor Haslett-Dale?
I mean, that should include actually a more comprehensive traffic study. I'm sorry, I might not have heard it. Massing was on your list?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And there was... No, that was it. Thank you.
Councillor Giddings?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to make sure the architectural character and materials compatibility with the existing neighborhood. Thanks.
Is it a proper issue to be concerned about snow storage? If so, please
For
include
single
it.
family, I can look into this and
Okay.
address it.
I have one more. When I read the planning justification report, discussion of the zoning, I found it to be dramatically different in its description of the area zoning from what I heard tonight from the delegates. And so I'm wondering if the planning justification report discussion of the area zoning is accurate enough for our purposes, if we might not want to take a really careful look at that.
Yeah, we'll take that into consideration as well.
Okay, thank you. I see two hands. Is one of them a motion to receive? Councillor Giddings, thank you very much. Any objection? There being none, that carries. Well, let's see. We have time for one more of the public meetings. I'm teasing. We'll stay all night if we have to. The next one is public meeting report on a zoning bylaw amendment for ASC Oakville Facility Limited Partnership. Catherine Buckerfield is on hand for questions, and we have a delegation from Len Radomski, who is with Ruth Victor and Associates for all. This is a seniors care Oakville facility, and we're here to hear comments from the public and Mr. Radomski. Mr. Radomski, we look forward to your description of the project.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, members of staff, public. Next slide, please. I'll make a brief presentation.
We just ask you to address the microphone.
Certainly.
So that everyone can hear your presentation.
Certainly. Next slide, please. The subject site is located at Dundas Street West and Hospital Gate. It's currently completing construction, so the air photo is a little old, but driving by the site, you'll notice that there is a building there. Next slide, please. 3000 Hospital Gate is a seniors care facility that is nearing the end of construction. All Seniors Care has filed an application to amend the zoning bylaw to convert 33 seniors care units to 33 seniors apartments. The simplest way to describe this change is that full kitchens will be added to these 33 units. Next slide, please. This is an example of the units. There are going to be several types of units. We'll have 2 bedrooms and 1 bedroom suites with a den. Next slide, please. Official Plan Amendment number 35 was approved by the Region of Halton on March 7th, 2023. This amendment establishes the hospital district as a growth area and establishes a new land use Schedule R to provide for a mix of uses including institutional, employment, residential, and commercial and future roads for the district, as well as introduces area-specific policies for the growth area. This area is planned to be a center for healthcare innovations with an emphasis on institutional and office development, with residential uses complementing the employment capacity of the district. Next slide, please. The site is zoned institutional and is subject to the site-specific special provision 59 of the Town of Oakville zoning bylaw 2009-189. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to remove the prohibited use of dwelling units within a nursing home or retirement home and to include 33 dwelling units as a permitted use to allow for a broader continuum of care within this facility in accordance with the official plan policies set out within OPA 35. Next slide, please. We have some climate change initiatives within the building. There will be electric vehicle chargers, community green programs, and initiatives with staff and residents. There's a constant review of available programs, such as CMHC energy initiatives, vendor reviews to ensure we are dealing with green-focused and responsible vendors, detailed operational and maintenance programs to ensure energy efficiency and systems operations at peak energy points. There will also be annual resident systems reviews and consultations to ensure industry advancements and implemented where appropriate. Next slide, please. Public engagement. We held a PIM on February 22nd, 2024. Members of the public living within 300 meters of the project were mailed notices pursuant to the town and provincial planning requirements. No members of the public attended this virtual meeting. Next slide, please. And I will conclude. The proposed amendment to zoning bylaw 2009-189 is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to and implements the growth plan, and conforms to the Region of Halton official plan, OPA 35, and the Livable Oakville plan. The development proposal for 3000 Hospital Gate represents good planning and is supported by the provincial, regional, and local planning policies. Next slide, please. And thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor Nanda, you have a question for the gentleman?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you so much for your presentation. My question is, so these 33 units that you want to change to dwelling units, so are these units that are going to be sold separately within the seniors' home? How does that work?
Through you, Mayor Burton. These will be
Sorry.
seniors' apartments. These will be rental apartments and not part of a condominium application or anything like that.
So within your other units within the seniors' homes, it's the same thing?
It will be the same thing, except you will be
More independent?
more independent. That's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
good way to
Is there a reason you decided you wanted to do this?
The developer, All Seniors Care, has had a lot of questions about senior-specific apartments. People weren't wanting actual care units. They wanted something geared towards more independent living.
So they could be independent, but they could also get care within?
That's correct. They can also
Within.
use the amenities of the building.
Okay. And maybe just a question for planning, then for our planning staff. Do you foresee any issues with changing the zoning bylaw to amend to be able to do this?
Through you, Mayor Burton, this would be put forward in a recommendation, but right now, as laid out in the report, OPA 35 instituted this area as the hospital district, which allows for residential units. When this site-specific zoning originally came into place, that provision was not there, that permission, so that's why this can now come forward as a zoning bylaw amendment.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Councillor Nanda. Councillor Elgar?
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Thank you very much for coming. I thought this was already what was always proposed there, where you go in one end where you're independent, and as you keep progressing to less health, they keep moving through the system until you get to the end. That's the way it was designed, wasn't it?
I believe it was, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the one part they didn't get done then at the
time, through you, your mayor, at the time of the original rezoning, there was no residential policies in place to allow for a non-institutional use. So
Okay.
now these are independent units, or will be, hopefully.
independent, but still, they're owned by, it's still part of the same
It
facility.
will be a rental suite within the facility.
Right, yeah. No, I thought that already was in place, so I was kind of surprised it wasn't. Because I remember back a number of months ago, it was Councillor Chisholm who was questioning it, how it was going to work, and I forget how, that was quite a while ago, but I thank you. So that sounds like, I can understand why nobody came to complain from the other side of the road. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Helger. All right, anything else? I think we're good. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Do staff have any issues to identify on this?
Sorry. Okay, sorry. Through you, Mayor Burton, we will make sure that we provide the policy context to demonstrate that residential is permitted in this area and the timeline for when that happened, so you can see why it wasn't permitted previously and it can be permitted now. Thank you.
So you're all making this sound like a bit of a housekeeping matter.
I think it's in your hands as council whether you'd like this to go forward. We do have a process for amending the zoning bylaw that we're following.
All right. That's great to hear. We look forward to the result. I would just ask one question. The number is quite specific, 33 units. But the remedy sought is to permit dwellings generally and give permission for 33, if I understood it correctly. Is that what I'm supposed to understand?
Right now, as it's proposed, they're proposing 33 units. When the zoning bylaw comes forward, we can be specific about how that permission gets laid out. It's whether we allow only 33 units or if we allow for greater permission down the road. I think that's something that can be explored.
On the matter.
Okay, thank you.
I need a member of council to receive this and have staff consider such comments as were provided by council. Councillor Nanda, thank you. Any objection? That's carried. All right, I think we got time for a couple more. 6.3, the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment and plan of subdivision for Cross Realty Incorporated district developments. And Kate Coburn, our staff, is available for questions, and we have delegations from, we have two delegations. No, we have a delegation from Cross Realty, who's first to describe the project. And then we have Mr. Terry Branch from Oakville Community Association and Claire Mary from TCRA. Mr. Charanzenko, welcome. Council looks forward to the presentation.
Evening, Mayor Burton, members of council, town staff, and public. My name is Dave Charanzenko. I'm a principal at Bousfields. We are urban planners, urban designers, and public engagement specialists. We are here this evening to speak to the redevelopment proposal at 157 and 165 Cross Avenue in Midtown Oakville. On the screen, you will see the subject site outlined in red. The site has an area of approximately 0.96 hectares in size. It's the combined or the consolidation of two commercial properties on the north side of Cross Avenue, directly across from Oakville GO Station. As you can see, it's identified in the central portion of Midtown Oakville and is located approximately 185 meters north of the Oakville GO Station platform and 350 meters west of the future Trafalgar BRT. Today's existing built form context is largely considerate of the existing use of the property, largely commercial, as most of you familiar with the area are aware of, which is also part of a transformative plan to redevelop the area around Oakville GO Station as an urban growth center, and in particular as a new center for intensification for the town of Oakville. Next slide, please. Just turning the site on its side, so Cross Avenue is on the left side of your screen. You can see that the plan redevelopment of the subject site is for a 2-tower development. Tower A, so that's the southern tower facing Cross Avenue, is 61 stories. The northern tower, Tower B, is 45 stories. You can see the blue hatched area surrounding the 2 towers is lands being conveyed to the town of Oakville for road widenings along Cross, a new north-south street along the east property line, and a new east-west street along the north property line. The proposal includes substantial POPs, or a privately owned, publicly accessible space. That's the teardrop space outlined in green. It looks like on this screen. On my slide, it's blue. And then it's surrounded by a 3-story podium that connects those 2 towers together. In total, the 2 buildings will include about 97,858 square meters of gross floor area. That's comprised of 2,692 square meters of retail space at the first floor and at the mezzanine level, and then 1,027 square meters of office space on the second floor above, and then the floors above that are for residential use, with 94,138 square meters in total. Approximately 1,198 units are proposed between the 2 residential towers. And to support those residential units, there's 5,129 square meters of amenity space, which is both indoor and outdoor amenity space within the podium. To support the mix of uses on the site, there's 819 vehicular parking spaces proposed underground. In addition, there are 1,204 bicycle parking spaces located in the podium. And as I mentioned, that POPs area, or that privately owned, publicly accessible space in the southeast corner of the site is just over 1,057 square meters in size. Next slide, please. The rendering in front of you is looking through the POP space, so looking northwest through the site. On the left of your screen, you can see a staircase that takes you from that POP space at grade up to the mezzanine level, where there's a second level of retail activity that encapsulates that teardrop POP space. You can also see the pass-through of this POP space through the podium level to the north. You can see that it's going to be programmed for both the uses that surround it, so some seating areas for potential restaurants and cafes, as well as opportunities for the residents and future employees of the development to occupy some of those seating arrangements in those POP spaces. Next slide, please. Now we're looking eastward along Cross Avenue at the towers. You can see that taller 61-story tower up against Cross Avenue, and then steps down to the shorter tower to the north. Next slide, please. Just looking at the subject site from a land use perspective, you can see that the subject site is in a split land use designation. The southern half is in an urban center designation, and the northern half is in an urban core. Both of these land use designations provide for a vibrant mixed-use transit supportive community on the site and the surrounding area. It's also the center for excuse me, the town's tallest buildings within an urban growth center. And the policy also provides opportunities for increasing the height subject to providing community benefits. The subject site is also identified to improve the road network for both transit, pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles. Next slide, please. From a zoning perspective, the site is part of the MTC, or a transition zone for all of Midtown, and it's being proposed to be rezoned to mixed-use urban core MU4 to permit the mix of uses and site-specific standards. Next slide, please. Again, the cross now is on the right side of your screen. You can see the various conveyances. So Block 2 is a road widening of Cross Avenue. Street B is the new north-south road at the top of your screen, and Street A is the new east-west road at the left side of your screen, leaving Block 1, the development site, at just over 0.6 hectares in size. And this is the draft plan of subdivision to make those road conveyances and create the development block. Next slide, please. In terms of climate change, we've specifically identified a 500-meter radius around Oakville's GO station. This is the area that is anticipated to generate the greatest intensity of development to support transit investment in the GO rail, as well as the future BRT along Trafalgar. That opportunity alone, providing more mix of uses, excuse me, and specifically more residents and jobs in close proximity to transit is our #1 climate change objective, getting people out of their cars, using other modes of transit to get close to their jobs and their homes. Next slide, please. This evening is the second time that the proposal has been presented to the public. Pre-application, there was a virtual public meeting held on July 26th of 2023. 26 attendees were present at that virtual meeting. And just to highlight some of the comments that were received from those attendees, #1 was parking and traffic generated by the proposal. 2 was the amount of housing. 3 was the infrastructure and public realm requirements of the development. 4 were the development details, or the development statistics that I went through, and the timeline for development of the site. And 5 were questions about district development and their interest in Midtown Oakville. Next slide, please. That's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think you have some, and I might ask you one off the bat if council doesn't mind. I'm confused about parkland in high-density development. Is it, should we be expecting 10% of the site to be parkland? And if we should be, I'm not sure I saw any.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you're exactly right. The Planning Act does require of sites of this size up to a maximum of 10% of the development area dedicated for parkland. You will see that a POP space was identified at just over 1,000 square meters in size. So that is a privately owned, publicly accessible space, similar to parkland, but privately owned, so that essentially below-grade interest can occur on those lands, but it will be publicly accessible as parklands, but more in an urban environment with seating arrangements and passive recreation.
Well, I'm worried that I'm slow at math, but it looked like 1% of, but maybe I mean, is it 10% of the site?
What, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. So there are provisions for the development site. So when you calculate that 10%, it's 10% of the area that can be developed and not the area that is being conveyed to a municipality for road widenings, et cetera. So that, from that perspective, the development site is 0.6 of a hectare. And 0.1 of a hectare of POP spaces being proposed, or 1,000 square meters.
Okay, I guess that's technically more than 10% then.
Of POP space, yes.
Yeah, so I guess the issue for staff is whether POPs is as good as parks. Okay, thanks. You helped me understand it. Councillor Duddick and Councillor Hazard-Thiel have more questions.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Along the same vein, I noted at the onset of your presentation you had that green teardrop, yet further along the presentation that became concrete. So which is it? Is it green or is it concrete?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that area that was in a green color coding on the plan, that is the POP space. It will have a variety of hardscaping and softscaping, and so it will provide for plantings. It won't be entirely sodded or treed, for that matter. It'll be more of an urban park space that provides for more passive recreational uses.
Okay, I guess out of interest, what is at this point, are you gearing for 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom in these units?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's a mix of residential units being proposed. Just to look at this, over 100 of the units, or 8%, will be 3-bedroom units. 346 units, or 29%, will be 2-bedroom units. And 752 units, approximately, or 63%, will be 1-bedroom units.
Okay, so when I combine the two buildings, you basically have 106 stories of development in this small piece of property. And you're proposing that the concrete and a couple of trees is sufficient for families?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, Midtown Oakville will have a variety of green spaces. So the POPs is one type of green space that's being proposed to serve the future community of Midtown Oakville. So this is one of those wide variety of public spaces.
I guess my concern is, while I appreciate you're referring to a wide variety, I'm thinking about the people who live in those two buildings. And for them to come out of their door and be met with concrete for Johnny and Becky to go and play on, a bench is not going to cut it. So that's just my personal opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Duddick, thank you. Councillor Hazard-Thiel.
Thank you for your delegation or your information. I'm just want to just clarify a few things. Your urban design report that we received doesn't reference the current OP. I'm not sure why that was. So it references a draft OP, but it does not reference the current OP.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it's my understanding that the materials that were submitted as part of the application reference the in-force documents, so the growth policies of the Livable Oakville Plan, and not the draft policies of the Midtown Oakville secondary plan.
So the information that's posted does have an urban design brief that references a draft OP. It doesn't reference the current OP in full force and effect, just as for your information. My other question is for staff. I didn't see, and forgive me if I missed it, an area plan that shows this application and the applications that would be beside it, north of it, and I believe that's one of our requirements.
Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, yes, there is an area concept plan which shows this developer's site, as well as the 3 other sites that are currently under appeal at the Ontario Land Tribunal.
And where would I find that?
My apologies, it should be online. If it is not, we can get it to you. We will get it posted.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. And my last question is just around the public input. So you summarized what those 5 core things that you heard at the public meeting. But in other reports that we've received on other applications from other planners, they've always provided the answer that was provided by the applicant, but it isn't in your report. So you've briefly summarized it here, and then I'm looking in the greater detail. And again, you've just listed the questions that were asked. So is that just your standard process, and is there a way we could get the answers transcribed that you gave to the public?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So staff will take back all the comments that were received at this public meeting, as well as the comments that were received at the pre-application consultation. And the applicant will provide a response to both sets of public comments along with the public meeting report.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you, through Mayor Burton. Privately owned open space accessible to the public. Relatively new in this area. However, I've been reading that apparently, to my surprise, that doesn't mean it will always remain public. In fact, it can switch from private, because it is private, and the public is gone. Have you ever heard of that happening?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The POPs instrument has been used successfully in a number of municipalities to secure public interest on private properties, and that interest can be registered on title to secure the public's occupation or presence in those spaces without it being removed by a private interest.
My show is, have you ever heard of it being removed?
Not to my knowledge.
You're not aware of it ever happening. You are a land use planner, I take it.
I am, yes.
And you've never heard of it happening anywhere?
Not on a project that I've worked on where we have secured a POP space as part of the development.
Okay, no, I was just asking. I wasn't talking specifically you. I meant in general. You've never heard of it happening? You're
no.
Like you're the expert on this area.
Yeah, I will add POP spaces are also being considered under the Planning Act as potential opportunities for municipalities to secure parkland. So these are, I'm sure, policy updates that will be shared with council by staff. But POPs are being introduced at a provincial level through future legislation as an opportunity to enhance the amount of publicly accessible spaces in more urban environments.
That's what I've been learning too. It's not a slam dunk. They have been switched. If you need information, I thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adams.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the presentation. 2 areas of question for you. The first is about parking. Can you tell me how the parking is proposed to be sold? Is it being sold jointly with units, or is it being separated? How do you propose to do that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the proposed rate of parking per residential unit is about 2 units per space, so 0.5 spaces per unit. What that does is it gives an opportunity for future residents who don't want to own a vehicle to buy a unit without the parking space, and those that do want to buy a unit and have a parking space to buy that parking space separately.
So are the parking spaces being sold separately from the units, so that if person A who initially buys a unit with a parking space but then later decides they don't want the parking space, they could sell the parking space without selling their unit?
No, the parking space would run with the unit that was being purchased.
So there won't be a secondary market for the parking spaces, is what you're saying?
Not for the residential spaces sold. I suppose a tenant could, or an owner could rent out their space if they wanted to. I don't see, for example, a situation where you could prevent a owner of a space from renting it out, just like they would potentially want to rent out their unit.
Okay. So that's one question for our staff to report back on, is how is the parking design appropriate in terms of the ownership structure that's being proposed? The second question on the parking, you mentioned the half unit per dwelling unit. Is that rate the rate that you think the market wants, or is that where did the half unit come from? If the province took away the requirement for parking, for example, as a minimum, would you be asking for something different?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a really good question. I think parking is a market-driven exercise. When these units get to market, you will find people who want a more affordable urban lifestyle may choose not to purchase a parking space, and that will drive demand versus the amount of parking that is being proposed. And that's why the flexibility of having lower rates and often in urban centers, no requirement or no minimum requirement for parking doesn't mean that there will be zero parking. It means that it will be subject to the market when those buildings get to that stage.
Okay. I think staff have probably already captured the issue of parking supply as being a question to come back to. The other area I wanted to ask you about is affordability of housing. What does your project, what does the proposal do with respect to providing affordable housing? So we talked about the number of units that have different number of bedrooms, but all in, what would you be doing to make any of those units, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom units, more affordable for residents?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's interesting that we follow up the question about parking with affordability when an underground parking space costs upwards of $85,000 a space.
That's why I was asking about whether you would separate the two, because I recognize it's an affordability issue.
It's an intrinsic affordability issue by providing that parking. It's an extra $85,000 to $100,000 on the price of a unit to own one of those parking spaces. So it's intrinsically affordable.
So are you doing anything else to provide affordable housing within the large number of units that you're proposing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that that's subject to discussion on the ultimate proposal. As I mentioned, this proposal is seeking more height and density than is currently permitted in the mid-to-home growth policies, and as a result, that additional density or bonusing is subject to community benefits, and that suite of community benefits can be a discussion with the developer.
Okay, thank you. I wonder if our staff can report back on that particular issue as well. Thank you.
Councillor Giddings. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. You started off speaking about the green initiatives for your building. Could you just take me through those again? I believe it was the proximity to the GO train station, allowing people easy access to public transit.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. So if I'm understanding correctly, you were talking about the climate change initiatives?
Yes.
Okay. So in my opinion, one of the key elements of climate change is getting people out of their private automobiles and encouraging them to use public transit and making walking and cycling accessible for those in close proximity to transit, in close proximity of their homes to their workplaces. And that's what intensification along the lines of this proposal does. It creates more housing and more job opportunities in close proximity to transit so that people don't need to rely on their private automobiles. They can use walking and cycling as their primary mode of transportation, either to get them to the public transit or to get them across Midtown.
Thank you for that. Are there considerations for any other initiatives that may be attractive through marketing or through purchasers that want to reduce greenhouse emissions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that that's something that the developer would be interested in exploring at a detailed design stage. Perhaps what I glossed over really quickly is the amount of indoor and outdoor amenity spaces that are being proposed. So in total, there's 4 square meters of indoor and outdoor amenity space per unit. So that creates an opportunity for us to not only plan outdoor amenity spaces, so this is separate from the POP space, outdoor amenity spaces to be green with landscaping and opportunities to reuse water, but also the indoor amenity spaces and opportunities to use those spaces as well to enhance the livability of
it'll
those
be
units.
the detailed design change where we look at EV charging or type of construction, that type of.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision level. When we get to the site plan level for designing the buildings, that would be, I would say, the stage where we get a detailed energy audit and opportunity to explore those type of materiality choices to help the environment.
I appreciate the complexity, because, as you said, it's market-driven, whether it be for parking or amenities, space, whatever. How far into the process will that be in terms of the discussions for the amenity space, whether it be POPs, whether it be green space, whether it be whatever people are looking for at the time to set your building apart from the others, because there are going to be choices. Is there a vision at this point, or is it just get the square footage and units done, and that'll come late when the marketing guys get involved?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this stage, at the planning approvals stage of the project, there are certain elements of the project that will be secured. So for example, the POP space that we've identified, the amount of indoor and outdoor amenities space available for future residents of the building, the amount of office space, the amount of retail space, all of those elements of the proposal will be secured through the official plan amendment and rezoning application. And so at that level, that's the appropriate time where those elements of the project are secured. When you get into more about the design of the buildings and the type of end users in those spaces, that I would say is at a later stage when they get time to marketing the project.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Adams, for bringing up the parking issue.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. I know that your response to this will probably be this comes at design stage, but I want to know a little bit more of the retail. We've seen a lot of condo developments, excuse me, in the area that get developed with the promise of retail on the main floor, and they turn out to be very small units that are not really appropriate for the type of retail that I think that the community is hoping for. So have you given any consideration, or have your client given any consideration as to the sizes, the floor plates, the height, ceiling heights, that sort of thing for retail to be more conducive to larger scale retail, which is what the industry trend is these days? Or should I say larger format retail?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The retail spaces have not been defined at this stage, so the size of the commercial retail units has not been defined. What we do know is that there's approximately almost 27,000 square meters of retail at the ground floor and at that mezzanine level. And in that illustration or that rendering, the first rendering that I showed, you can see that there's a clear opportunity to have people rise up the staircase to the mezzanine level, which is surrounded by retail. And you can see pretty clearly in the design concept from the architects that that space is more intended for restaurants or cafes where people can spill out into that mezzanine space just above the pops. The retail at grade might be more convenience oriented. So people passing by the GO station on their way home might want to experience some convenient retail at grade there, as well as, of course, the residents who live in the building, and then the office workers who will spend their daytime hours there. They'll all rely on that retail. So it will be a variety of retail spaces. I can't tell you that there's any end user of those retail spaces at this stage, but there will be quite a variety of size of spaces to accommodate those types of uses.
So when you say convenience style retail spaces, you're predominantly referring to spaces that would support the buildings themselves as opposed to the greater community. That seems to be what because that's I think that's the crux of the problem with retail and condos, is that they're generally designed to support strictly the building, and they don't create any animation in the community. If you look at the Midtown core planning that's being done, you see these great pictures and wonderful, examples of retail that will attract people to the area. And I understand you don't have any end users in place, but is your client actively considering the design elements around retail to be able to attract some of those destination-style retail locations that I think that not just the residents of the building, but that the overall community would like to see in place, i.e. a grocery store, a bookstore, things that actually draw traffic and animate the community.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when I use the term convenience, I mean convenience from the perspective of a transit user arriving at the GO station, walking out of the GO station and looking for convenient opportunities for retail. That's what I meant by convenience, not literally a convenience store or a hairdresser or a dry cleaner or something like that. But 100% that the intent is to create this activity at grade for all of the pedestrians and cyclists that are passing around this transit infrastructure.
Okay. Perhaps the staff could make note that I would love to see more information around the retail opportunities that would exist in this building should it come to fruition.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. I wonder if I could ask, when would we see, or will we see, what I understand the province wants community benefits to be linear or proportional in some objective and measurable way between the benefits to the community and the extra height and density. And when would we see that, which implies to me it'd be like an equation. Is that your understanding of what we're to expect from you at some point?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think community benefits is a very general term because it can mean a great number of things to communities, and it's usually never just one thing. And when you have an opportunity of the scale of development like this in close proximity to transit, I think you can appreciate that there's going to be excuse me, more than one community benefit associated with a development like that. And I would also advise that this is part of the development approvals process, is identifying what those community benefits are and coming to an agreement with the developer through the approval of the project on how to secure those community benefits in the development.
So if I'm understanding correctly, our staff will tell you what they negotiate with you rather than you making an offer to us, the council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think that there's a discussion. I wouldn't call it a negotiation. I think it's more of a discussion of all of the community benefits that the community wants to see. So that includes council, staff, the members of the public that we hear tonight, and then that informs our decision on what type of benefits are being offered in the development.
Okay, but we're clear, aren't we, that this is part of the official plan zoning stage. It's not a later part of design. This is an upfront matter.
Correct.
Okay, so it would have been interesting to see some discussion of that in your materials, but thank you anyway for your answers. Councillor Hazlet-Thiel?
Mayor Burton, that was my exact question. So long as that's noted and that we understand what community benefits would be considered, that would be appreciated.
All right, well, I'll check with you before I ask a question next time. Thank you very much for your information, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you call the registered delegations?
Terry Branch.
Mr. Branch, welcome. Council looks forward to what you have to say.
Had some problems with this before, so. Good evening, Mayor Burton, councillors, attendees. We thank you, Council, for addressing the community concerns on April the 22nd, and we eagerly await your updates on June the 3rd. I'm Terry Branch from Oakville Community Association, supporting a plan that is best for Midtown. Contrary to misconceptions, Oakville does not ignore the housing crisis or resist development, but we oppose the dismissive consultants and developers, coercive political tactics, and 45 and 61-story towers at 157 and 165 Cross Avenue. Without enough community consultation, and for the reasons that I will share with you in the following slides. So we advocate for residents' input and alternatives, and we stand with the council to have wise choices for Midtown. Next slide, please. The proposal for 2 large condo towers in one which is 61 stories tall seems to conflict with Oakville Town Council's recent decision for a new vision for Midtown. This disregards resident input, and it challenges established procedures, raising concerns about its community impact. Next slide. We suggest that tall towers in Midtown, actually, who suggests the tall towers in Midtown? Is it the province, the region, planning team, developers, or a combination? Questions arise if the town council had input, as Mayor Burton announced the council's new plans on April 22nd and special meeting on June 3rd to provide us with the update to incorporate residents' input. Next slide, please. With over 2,000 residents crammed into less than a hectare, this outrageous high population density completely ignores suggested alternatives and wise choices for Midtown. Such disregard is completely unacceptable. Next slide, please. this application is ridiculous. It promotes maximizing instead of optimizing and has questionable affordability issues, as we heard earlier, especially with Lake Ontario view apartments and penthouses. Who will be living in these units, in these towers? Next slide, please. Is it the intention of the proposal to ignore wise choices for Midtown and instead prioritize generating highest possible revenues and profits? Next slide, please. It is clear that the Ontario Land Tribunal prefers optimization over maximization. In cases like Eden Shaw, Elizabeth Development City versus the city of Mississauga. Now, why is the developer prioritizing site optimization to help the town council decide what's in best in Oakville? Next slide, please. The Eden Shaw Elizabeth Development Limited versus City of Mississauga. In that development, the OLT emphasized the importance of looking beyond just property suitability for construction. It is better for the developer to collaborate with the town council after June 3rd to comply with wise choices for Midtown instead of risking conflict by proposing 45 and 61-story towers to the OLT. Next slide, please. The OLT's decision in the Fengate Lunar Gardens versus Hamilton case warns against building tall towers in low-density areas. Due to inadequate planning, it would be onerous if the developer to withdraw these proposals and collaborate with the town council on a new plan after June 3rd. Next plan, please. Next slide, please. The new towers will contribute to the shadows that a study show will harm nearby homes on both sides of QEW. They will reduce natural light, causing lighting and heating costs to increase and higher demands on the power grid, affect plant growth and personal health, and cause safety risks such as the visibility could be poor and icy roads. Sadly, taxpayers-funded consultants failed to alert residents about potential issues during the consultation on the proposed concepts. Next slide, please. These are just more areas impacted by the shadows. Next slide, please. The developer's decision to offer less than 0.5 parking spaces per unit, as we heard earlier, totaling 599 spaces in 1,198 residential units, may cause parking shortages and conflicts. Tenants may have to resort to limited street parking, similar to cities like Brooklyn, New York. And believe me, it's terrible there. Highlighting the lack of focus on residents' parking requirements. Next slide, please. Inadequate traffic planning in the proposal highlights the need to balance growth and with infrastructure limitations, particularly during the long construction period like Yonge and Eglinton, to avoid congestion risk. While short-term improvements help, prioritizing long-term solution is crucial to address transportation network capacity constraints. Next slide, please. Future traffic congestion is expected to persist due to increasing traffic volumes despite this development. If not properly planned, failed development in the past can offer lessons for addressing traffic issues. Next slide, please. OCA cannot support this application due to reasons outlined in this presentation. Next slide, please. With 11 towers, ranging from 44 to 61 stories, OCA cannot support the developer's proposal of over 6,300 residential units due to lack of consideration for key factors such as surrounding context and the expected updated midterm development vision coming on June 3rd. Next slide, please. it is not reasonable for Oakville to construct a 61-tower building, considering that large Canadian cities have buildings with fewer floors. If built, Oakville would have one of the top 5 tallest buildings in Ontario. Next slide, please. The developer application disregarded input from residents and the OCA, showing no interest in the feedback for the new direction to be revealed on June the 3rd. Next slide, please. Town Council is aware of midterm concepts issues. I won't read them, but we urge Planning Committee to revisit and incorporate these in the new plans. And ending with these 2 questions. What are your thoughts on the developer's proposal to add 61 and 45-story towers to the 9 towers currently in the system? And the second question is, how does this proposal fit with the council's new vision that values alternatives and community input? Thanks for your attention.
Thank you for the time you took to provide us this information. Councillor Elgar has a question for you.
The question is, through Mayor Burton, is can we get a copy of your presentation?
Absolutely.
I would appreciate that because there's a lot of wealthy information in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, over to planning staff for, oh, I'm sorry, over to Claire Mary from TCRA. Welcome. We look forward to your remarks.
If you'll indulge me again tonight, thank you very much. I do have a question. I have a couple of exhibits. I don't need them now, but I was wondering if I'm allowed. I'd love the camera from up top, just at the very end. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, okay. So again, hello everyone. Thank you, Mayor Burton, councillors, town staff. My name is Claire Mary, and for this delegation, I am representing both the Trafalgar Chartwell Residents Association, TCRA, and the Oakville Lakeside Residents Association, OLRA. So we would like to delegate against the 157 and 164 Cross Avenue District Development application, and we add some further questions based on what they've published. The application is for 145-story and 161-story tower building. The 61-story tower building is 204 meters in height and is inclusive of a 3-story podium element. The site is just under 1 hectare in area. It's on the north side of Cross Avenue and proposes approximately, I'll do the imperial, 10,000 square feet of office space, as well as approximately 30,000 square feet of retail and commercial space. So I note the dwelling units range from 523 square feet for a 1-bedroom to 918 square feet for a 3-bedroom. Are any of these units designated affordable units? And can we see a plan view of a floor plan layout, including the bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchen, mechanical rooms, any closets? The plan is still mostly made up of 1-bedroom units. Will there be any 4-bedroom options on any of the floors that were not shown in the architectural drawings? They compile a bunch of floors together and then they've stacked them. I'm just not sure if there was maybe a couple floors missing with some 4 bedrooms. What features of the proposal are geared towards families and kids play spaces? What is the expected total population of inhabitants and office retail workers in these buildings? What type of retail/commercial tenants are the developers hoping to attract? What is the anticipated lifespan of the building? I believe that question actually was asked earlier. In what ways is the building sustainable? Can district give us an example of a project of this size and scale that they have already built? Further, From the July 2023 presentation to the current proposal, the property line setbacks have only appeared to all but disappear. For example, in July 2023, there was a property line setback of 7 meters drawn on the west side of the building. In today's proposal, that setback has shrunk to 0.2 meters. 0.2 meters in Imperial is 8 inches, and this is 8.5 inches wide. So this plan, being that it only has 8 inches of side yard setback, it also proposes 7 floors of underground parking below that. To me, it's clear that the reason the developers have shrunk these property line setbacks is because they have had to pull the two powers, basically they've had to pull the two towers apart in order to make that 30 meters that was previously a 30-meter distance between the two towers that was previously mentioned in the draft OPA. My questions around that are this commercial space at the lower levels in between has grown as a result of pulling these two towers apart, but then so has the amount of impervious surface in that shared public space and the 3-story podium area. Their drawings show, actually, their renderings rather, and plan views actually show that the green space in this removal of the setbacks, the green space around the perimeter was completely lost, but it also shows that the center lost quite a bit of green space. So I ask, how does this align with the core value of Midtown, of livability and human scale? As the town staff and urban planning consultants are working towards lower population targets for the 2031, 2051, and beyond for Midtown, how has this plan been adapted to reflect this change in direction? This application presents towers that are too tall, too dense, no side yard setbacks, and only going for the minimum setbacks previously stated as necessary between towers. There's barely any actual green space, and I believe assumptions have been made on road changes that are not quite yet finalized. In addition to these concerns, and I understand that some of this information is coming, but we still don't have comprehensive and up-to-date school plans, community services, health and safety services, full traffic plans, or infrastructure and financial plans for Midtown. We need to focus on really nailing the details of planning and providing these necessary and important services for the future inhabitants. There needs to be a focus on manageable and human scale building sizes and not let the pressures to hastily build sky high get the best of us, get the best of our town, and get the best of what could be a meaningful Midtown. The risk of getting it wrong by allowing an application like this to go through is quite high. Other than the tall buildings, and I know this is not directly to the applicant, but other than the tall buildings and a GO train station, I'll ask, I think I've asked it before, I'll ask again, what is going to make Midtown special? So finally, buildings of this scale are uncharted territory for Oakville and all of Halton region. There are no other buildings this tall. And it also seems to be new for district developments. Approving a plan such as this could set an irresponsible precedent that we will not likely be able to maintain control of. We eagerly await the release of the new draft OPA and look forward to changes to this application based on this new direction. Thank you very much. And then if I could.
The camera's on.
Yeah.
You probably can see
Yeah, place document here. Yeah. So this is really just to show that this is what I was referring to back in July of 2023 when they did their presentation. There's the setback. It was 7 meters on the west side there. And this space was more generous. And they actually had some greenery and a thoroughfare kind of going all the way through without the podium deck fully connecting. And then now they have, and this was shown earlier, this was that kind of blue-ish green space. So all of this is covered, and the setback there you can see. Can you see me? Oh, setback there is 0.2 meters. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't see any questions, council.
Okay, thank you
Yes.
very much for everyone's time.
I would like a copy of your presentation.
Would you like the hard copy?
I'd love a hard copy.
Yeah, I will bring it to you after. Thank
Thanks. All right, council, I think we can confine it to table, turn to staff, and Councillor?
Someone from the floor?
Councillor, can I recognize staff now? Staff, could we hear from you about the issues list?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Burton, to council. Much of the matters, I believe, that were spoken, questions raised by council as well as the delegates this evening have been captured in the town's staff report. However, I think some further refinement has been discussed this evening can be highlighted in 11 points that were captured. The difference between traditional park space and urban park space, the review of materials and surface treatment of the POPs areas, distribution of residential unit types, reviewing the proportion and quality of POPs and park spaces with the residential density, the legality and longevity of POPs in municipal hands, parking minimums, affordable housing provisions, the review of opportunities, size, and proportion of retail and commercial spaces, consideration of community benefits, considerations towards family units and the like uses, and community services in schools which may be contemplated for the development. Have I captured
Thank you very
the
much.
essence? Excellent.
Councillor Hazlet-Thiel?
Did you include setbacks under the proposed land use mix heights and density? It's just, it was a clear call out from one of the delegates that the setbacks are, and the lot coverage is, they identified as excessive.
Building siting.
All right, council, Councillor Adams.
Thanks. Just on the parking issue, I think you noted the question about the adequacy of parking, but I was, in addition to that, I was trying to get at the question of the ownership structure and whether it's appropriate for the location. Can it be separated from the ownership of the condo units themselves, for example?
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Hazlet-Thiel again? All right. Council, we have an extra added delegation, Mr. Pierre Sauvageau. Mr. Sauvageau, this is your moment. As you know, this is the Identify the Issues session. Do you have issues to add to those that you just heard?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Please add them.
Sure. I wonder if the overhead can be shown here in regards to... Unfortunately, I didn't have a yeah, thank you very much. Basically, when I saw this image, I said to myself, are we living in the city of Toronto? We're not. We're living in the town of Oakville. 60 stories is a ridiculous height plus. I know it's been mentioned by all delegates, but I just want to stress that point. under the OPA as it exists currently, it says the area that's being occupied by district is max 20 stories. So you're looking at 60 stories. I hope the June 3rd will highlight what it will be. In regards to the community benefits, if you're going 60 stories, I think the town should have the ability to tell the developer the amount of affordable housing to be allocated within a building. It's done in other negotiations in other cities. Unfortunately, the negotiations with staff and the developer, we never see what the final outcome in that regards as to what the community benefits will be. I want to ensure that affordable housing is a specific item to be placed within any application in the future, especially for this one, in light of the fact that they want to go 60 stories. As Councillor Haslett-Teal mentioned, and I've sent to council many months ago, I tried my best to see what development is going within Midtown. And one concern, as I mentioned previously, is the fact that I want to see the people and estimated jobs highlighted for this development and for every other development within Midtown. As it stands right now, the plan originally by 2023, it's still outdated, but it said 13,400 people and 7,200 estimated jobs. And the various ones that are been approved, the application or in process, only like 6,479 estimated jobs. So that's not in regards to what Midtown is supposed to be. It's supposed to be livable. And I don't see where Midtown will become basically a bedroom community for the city of Toronto. And that's something that I'm truly, not aggravated, this wrong choice of word. Midtown is supposed to be very special. And as it is right now, it isn't. Simple as that. All those things about pops are basically concrete jungle. Definitely need more square footage. And Councillor Haslett-Teal mentioned the fact that we'd love to see how all the other applications and approved as well as in the pipeline as well as Ontario Land Tribunal where it has set in regards to the number of people which will be in Midtown as well as the jobs. And I took this a long time ago in regards to the overall town of Oakville. And basically, it had the various areas, like for instance, let's get that better. Thank you very much. Midtown Oakville is like 12,000, 8,000. Obviously, that's outdated. But I was hoping that the planning staff would have a map of the entire town of Oakville and update as specifically which areas within the various Bronte Village, Midtown, Kerr Street, downtown, as to what the estimated number, the new estimated numbers of residents as well as jobs. I haven't been able to find it. I wish it would be there, and I wish that staff would provide it and available on the public site as to what's going to be done overall in order to achieve the provincial mandate about having X number of people coming into the town. Lastly, I just want to thank you for the time taken to listen to me. It may appear as if I'm venting, but to be honest, I mean, it's such an important development in Midtown, and you got to get it right. It has to be livable. Livable, just not concrete jungle, not 60-story buildings. So I do not support at all this development proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sauvageau. We'll note that Mr. Sauvageau reinforced or seconded the concerns already identified. Council, I need the indicated motion from one of us to receive and direct staff to consider the comments. And I'm looking for a hand. Councillor Knoll, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, that carries. 6.4 is the public meeting report, official plan amendment, and zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision for Argo Nayagawa Corporation at 506 Burnham Thorpe Road West. We have our Senior Manager of Planning, Rob Thun, available for questions. There he is at the mic. And we have 3 delegations registered on behalf of this, application. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, the first registered delegate has pulled out, so it's Jessica Byers is our first one.
Madam Clerk, please call the delegations. Ms. Byers, welcome.
I'm going to jump in instead. Jess Byers is sitting in the audience, but she's not presenting. She's just available for questions.
So are you Ms. Rattel?
Yes.
Well, welcome to you.
Just in time. I turned back into a pumpkin at 9:30, so luckily I'll have time to get this done. Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council, staff, and members of the public. I do have a presentation. Is that queuing up? Thanks so much. I'm here on behalf of Argo Nayagawa Corporation to introduce these applications on Burnham Thorpe Road West. Next slide, please. The subject lands are located in North Oakville with an area of approximately 28 acres. The irregular northern border follows the Highway 407 ramp, and the site has frontage on Nayagawa Boulevard, Burnham Thorpe Road West, which is part of the future William Halton Parkway extension, and 4th line. The site is across Burnham Thorpe Road from King's Christian Collegiate. The subject lands are located within the town's Nayagawa Urban Core Study area. Next slide, please. This is the proposed concept. The blocks are divided up by public roads. Along the north end of the site in gray is a block for the future 407 Transitway, as well as a 14-meter setback required by the MTO and a trail running parallel on the south side. There's a stormwater management pond proposed in the southwest corner. The block on the southeast corner at the intersection of Nayagawa Boulevard and future William Halton Parkway is proposed to be mixed use, and that's where the highest heights will be located. The other 4 development blocks in orange are to be medium density condos. The applicant is proposing up to 16 stories at the corner and transitioning down to 3-story townhouses. Next slide, please. Bit of a backstory here on the official plan designation. The subject lands are currently designated employment district in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. However, through ROPA 48 and 49, the region removed the employment overlay from the area and designated it a primary regional node and strategic growth area. The town is in the process of expanding the Nayagawa Urban Core designation over this area. The applicant's site-specific official plan amendment is based on the town's draft OPAs, which I understand are coming forward for recommendation in June. The transitway is protected for. However, the Nayagawa station was not carried forward by the MTO in the environmental project report. My understanding is that the MTO is considering the need to begin a new study to reassess the viability of a transit station in the Nayagawa Urban Core and a possible new location. Next slide, please. The subject lands are currently zoned future development, which requires a rezoning in order to develop. We're proposing to bring additional permitted residential uses into a special Nayagawa Urban Core zone to allow for a broader range of compact housing options. Next slide, please. This is the preliminary draft plan itself. I covered the proposed blocks already with the concept, but I'll mention that existing water mains and sanitary sewers are located directly adjacent to the subject lands along Burnham Thorpe Road West and Nayagawa Boulevard. And these development blocks will all be subject to the site plan approval process in the future. Next slide, please. The 2 proposed public roads create a modified grid road network to facilitate convenient travel and support future transit service. So it's proposed to be right-in, right-out access on future William Halton Parkway and Nayagawa Boulevard and a full moves intersection at 4th line. At the north end, the proposal protects for a portion of the 407 transitway shown in orange that will implement a busway parallel to the existing 407 express toll route. Next slide, please. The proposal helps to mitigate climate change by promoting active transportation and the use of transit. The connectedness of the site to cycling infrastructure, off-street pathways, and trails in this area make it easier for residents to choose alternative modes of transportation. The compact housing forms proposed are more energy efficient than suburban alternatives, and the street tree canopy is proposed to exceed the town requirement. Next slide, please. We held a virtual public information meeting in the winter to chat with those in the area interested in the proposal. There weren't any comments or questions that required revisions to the plan. King's Christian Collegiate voiced support and was curious to know more about the future connections and amenities as they're looking to develop a retreat center nearby. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the applicant is prepared to advance the town's proposed redesignation to Neagao Urban Core in this area and deliver a range of housing forms within the strategic growth area to make efficient use of the services and future transit in this location. Next slide, please. As mentioned, Jess Byers and as well Bart Lopat from Argo Neagao Corporation are here to field any questions specific to the development. And then following the meeting, any further comments can be directed to Rob Thun.
Thank you very much. I have questions for you from first Councillor Shi, and then Councillor Nanda, and then Councillor Elgar. Councillor Shi.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I have a question about need you or our staff to do some clarification about those numbers for the height. So I found there's on the document Appendix F, there's land use policies. Is a maximum height is 8 stories. But on Appendix B, on page 12, I find there is a maximum height from change to 12 to 16. So can anybody to clarify this?
Yeah, I can start, but I think staff will be better able to address it. The town has proposed an OPA related to expanding this Neagao Urban Core designation, and within that OPA, staff are proposing 12 stories there. So that's sort of what we're starting from, and on a site-specific level, proposing 16 rather than 12. Whereas the town's draft proposes 12 stories.
So from 8 change to 12 and 12 change to 16 now. Am I correct?
Through you, Mayor Burton, to Councillor Xi, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shi. Councillor Nanda.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. I have a couple of questions. So I saw on the site there, you have no dedication for park or parkettes. So is that something, I mean, that's something that I would propose that is probably important, especially in your site where it is. There are no parks within the vicinity, and if there were no parks, there's no parks in the area of King's Collegiate either within that neighborhood, which did not allow those families to have anything nearby for their kids to be able to go to. And even in this proposal, families would have to go to a different area just for kids to be able to enjoy some green space and some park. So are you willing to put anything into the plan to have a park or parkettes within the development?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there will be private condo amenities developed as the blocks go through site plan, developed by the builders at that point. There isn't a public park designated in this location, but there is one proposed on the southeast quadrant of the intersection nearby, so that in the future will be available to residents of this area as well. But on a site level, it will just be private condo amenities.
So then for any families that want their children to go to the park, they would have to cross 2 major intersections just to get to a, to be able to attend just a local park. So I think my question for staff is, is that something that we would request to put in planning, or for our park staff for master plan to look into park space in this area?
Through you, Mayor Burton, to Councillor. As you can see in the matters to be addressed, the recommendation meeting, sufficient parkland for the future population is a consideration that needs to be undertaken.
Okay, thank you. My second question is there any more discussions happening with MTO in relation to having, and this might be a question for our planning staff as well, about transit within that corridor?
Through you, Mayor Burton, to Councillor. MTO has had discussions with town staff, and they are open to revisiting the transit station. So we're in the midst of providing that information to them to initiate that discussion.
Okay, perfect. So I think I would just add those two issues to see if planning staff can put that in as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nanda. Councillor Ilger?
Thank you, through Mayor Burton. Yeah, actually, Nanda kind of captured what I was, the transit, that was news to me. The transit was supposed to be there, and I heard you say it's kind of blown away and gone more eastward to Trafalgar or something?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. The environmental project report at the MTO prepared, initially that was one of their options, but as the report went on, it wasn't carried through as a station. So there is one proposed at Trafalgar and one proposed at Bronte, but it didn't end up in their final design.
So right now, Niagara isn't on the map at all for that? And you're saying it's at Bronte now and it is at Trafalgar? Those two?
The other two, they were initially contemplated as well as part of the chain of stations, but yeah, they've carried those two through.
So, yeah, that was news to me. Now, I thought, Mr. Thun, did you say that you're in negotiations now to kind of change that again? Did I hear right, or is that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I might, Councillor, we have met, staff has met with MTO's ADM a few months back, and we're in the midst of trying to pull additional information together, as Mr. Thun mentioned, so that we can present that to staff and they can further the technical review to put the station back in. We have been rather pushy, I'll say, over the last little while to try to reinstate that station. It was excluded when MTO did the EPR a few years ago, and so we'd initiated that conversation. So with the development industry as well as with the region and town of Milton, we have together met with the ADM to advance that.
How would that change this application that we have before us right now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure of the implications of that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, and thanks for highlighting that.
Councillor, to drop a little optimism into the picture, I recently had the Minister of Transportation on my little TV show, and we discussed, among other things, the new willingness of MTO to be nimble and quick and to consider the information they didn't have 2 years ago about the growth opportunities at Niagara. So given the information from staff that we're working on, planning growth there, the minister said that he could assure me that the staff would be, re-looking at having a station there.
Mayor Burton, I must say, how could they not have known 2 years ago that growth was coming? I think Councillor Nolan and I have known about that for, we're going on 20-some years now, so how did they miss it?
Well, when they were doing the environmental report, the information was that was far off, and they didn't think it was going to happen.
I see. Okay.
All right. Councillor Haslett-Deal and then Councillor Nolan.
I think this may be more for staff. I just want to understand employment use in and around this development. So there's going to be a change, and it's going to potentially be redesignated to urban core area. What employment lands are left in and around that area, and how close will they border?
Through you, Mayor Burton, to Councillor Haslett-Deal. We're preparing the Neogow Urban Core Review at the present time, and that will deal with the employment areas around it. This specific application deals with their property before the Neogow Urban Core Review is made final. So what we have left in that area, if we can pull up one of the slides again, it was shown in the concept plan. That one, oh, nope, that one right there. As it stands right now, you've got the employment land to the north of Burnhamthorpe Road, William Halton Parkway. To the west of the subject lands, you have the employment further to the northeast and further east on William Halton Parkway. The area to the southeast corner of 4th Line and William Halton Parkway is Neogow Urban Core. So there's not much left in this vicinity for true employment that was envisioned originally.
So thank you for clarifying that for me and bringing up the image. So in terms of an employment district, is it possible that, what kind of businesses could be established in those corridors? Or is that yet to be determined in terms of the review?
Are you talking about the employment areas?
Yes.
Those are still to be dealt with accordingly. No application is in on those. It is an employment district. They are either going to be light employment or general employment based on the location, but the actual uses have not been determined yet.
So it's interesting when you look at how the traffic could flow, et cetera, and we have employment district really abutting King's Christian Collegiate and existing residential, and yet we obviously, one of the reasons people might want to put their business there is access to the 407. And I guess we'll see it when you come forward with a plan, but I'm conscious of what the Ward 7 councillors experienced with the warehouse that was close to the housing in their area. And I just, again, want us to make sure we're learning that certain things are just not compatible with some of the residential use. But I guess we'll see that when you come back with a further report.
Through you, Mayor Burton, I will take that as an issue to be addressed in the recommendation report.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. Excuse me. I noticed the existing residential parcel at the far south end. Looks like a little bit of a gap in teeth. What is that's indicated on one of the plans as parcel 1A. What is the, explain that to me. Is that a separate application by another developer? How does that fit into the overall development piece?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is shown there to show how it can be coordinated. The development can be more cohesive, but that's not part of the application at this time.
Is there a separate application to staff for that parcel, or any indication of an application pending?
Through you, Mayor Burton, to Councillor Knoll. No, there is no application at the present time.
Oh, interesting. Tell me about the potential commercial that you referred to in your slide presentation for the corner property. What is the potential? What is the trigger point to make that happen? I'm always concerned about there not being sufficient neighborhood commercial in these areas, and I'm wondering if that's something that's being contemplated for that particular site.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's nothing proposed at this point for specific uses. Argo is having discussions with the other landowners as well. Our understanding is that there's going to be a more significant commercial development east of Neogow Boulevard in a future application. And then as well, there is a commercial block kitty corner to this site as well. So it's going to take more conversations with the other developers to make sure that it's not something that's going to be competing between the quadrants of the.
Right, but when you say commercial, you're referring to commercial retail space? Or are you talking about what?
Something worked into the mixed-use building on the ground floor level, something
so
at a local scale.
Convenience retail use.
Something like that would be appropriate.
If we could add that maybe to the issues list to report back on access to convenience commercial in that area, I'd appreciate it. That's all for me, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a follow question, which Councillor Noor pointed out the commercial use. So I find there's on Appendix B as well, the land use strategy for Niagara Urban Core. So they're not allowed, so you just delete, there's not include the restaurant, not include the urban square. So I just want to know the reason why it can't allow the hotel or other things, but cannot be the restaurant.
Through you, Mayor Burton, Councillor Shi, where are you looking at right now? If you can clarify for me, please.
Yeah, so that is, I think it's Appendix B to official plan amendment number 326 to the 1984 Oakville official plan, which is on the page 9, and item 6, section 7.6.6.2, the land use strategy in the Niagara urban core area. Permitted uses, buildings and structures.
Councillor, are you in the zoning bylaw or are you in the official plan?
Is Appendix B, bylaw 2022-054.
Your Worship, can I take this, this question away and look into it further?
Yep, no problem, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shi. Councillor Hazlet-Thiel?
I apologize, I should have asked this. Can you just clarify basements? When you do these townhouses, are there basements with them?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the builders have not been confirmed yet for this development. Right now, we're just looking at the subdivision and a flexible zoning that will accommodate a range of housing forms. I'm not sure of the details of that at this point.
Okay, so on the list of just in consideration of any application on this would be, what will they provide basements on the properties? And if there's a garage, what is the size of the garage? I'm just harking back to some of the earlier discussions we've had about without a basement, we end up with lots of constraints. And then the size of the garage was an issue in part of North Oakville, and I think it just needs to be there as a point to verify we're going to take care of it.
Councillor Shi?
Sorry, that's.
Okay, well then, hands down, folks. I'm trained to call you when you put your hand up. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, staff. I note that you've identified 18 issues or matters to be evaluated in the report at page 211. So I just want to amplify the concern about the proximity to warehouses. The thing I think is important is to try to prevent a situation where trucks are routed through a residential area. And so it's not so much, for me, it's not so much the location of the warehouses, it's whether or not they can get in and out of their warehouse district without going through the residential streets. So I think that'd be great. Thank you. Can I get a motion for the appropriate motion here? The receipt. Thank you, Councillor Shi, and the direction to consider. Is there any objection to Councillor Shi's motion? Madam Clerk, there is no objection. It carries. Thank you, Councillor Shi. Now we have no delegations on public meeting item 6.5, and I wonder if there are questions or if a member of council would like to give the indicated motion listed in the. Councillor Adams, is that a motion?
Yes, I'll give you a motion if there's nobody from the floor that wants to speak to it.
No, thank you. Councillor Hazlet-Thiel.
I just have a couple clarification questions. So in terms of the report, it says that you'll consider use minor as we evaluate it at the Committee of Adjustment. And you also mentioned that you will try and mirror the timing. One of the concerns we hear from the public is the timing for minor variances is incredibly tight. So so they find out Thursday night, Friday morning, and they have to be ready to show up at a variance hearing on Monday or Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday now. So is there consideration that instead of mirroring the minor variance timing, that we provide a greater length of time for the public to be aware of changes, proposed changes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, that is definitely something that we could consider through when we start to set up the process for minor zoning bylaw amendments.
Okay, thank you. And then my other is around, you have a comment that, it's for the purpose of accommodating new dwelling units greater than the number of dwelling units that exist on the site and affordable. So is this in support of the 3 units and ensuring that that is going to be addressed? Could you just maybe give me a little more clarity?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So this could be in a situation where an application required a variance of some sort for a 3rd unit on a site, and it could go through a minor zoning bylaw amendment process for that consideration to go to staff to be the approval authority rather than going through to the Committee of Adjustment.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Those are my questions, Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems this is a path that's almost starting to contradict the conversations we've been having as of late about taking community decisions away from the community and centralizing them within staff or Committee of Adjustment. So, in Ward 1, we're having a meeting with a group of residents who are just fed up with what we call a minor variance and how that has sort of slipped over the years to become more and more, and we're seeing neighborhood changes because of what's minor in nature. So we've had a couple of meetings recently where communities have come out and said, we want to say in what happens in our community. So, why are we going down this? It seems to me that the half funding is not moving forward right now. So I know this is a part, but why are we moving forward with this right now then, when it might be sort of counterintuitive to involving community and neighborhoods in decisions that happen in their neighborhoods, and especially if the half funding's off the table now? Why are we proceeding forward with this right now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So the intent of this particular amendment for minor zoning bylaw amendments to bring to staff to delegate the authority for staff to approve is really to accelerate the delivery of housing, regardless of the half application or not. There is a broader housing crisis that we are looking to address, and some of these more tailored solutions, such as a delegated authority process specific to creating additional housing units on a site. These aren't variances that are considered for just expanding a house for a single detached home. Those would still have to go through the Committee of Adjustment. These ones are specific only for the creation of new housing units, and so there's an opportunity there for us to consider the expediency in which we want to approve new housing.
Okay, yeah, it just doesn't seem like we're being consistent right now, because we're trying to do things to build more housing, and we just heard loud and clear a week ago that people they want to have a say over that. So we're taking that away from them right now. So what are the mechanisms that one individual in our staff is going to be accountable to what the residents are going to rightly raise up and say, why is this being allowed to happen? And we're going to say, because we delegated authority. So what are the mechanisms that any input is going to be able to be had from residents when they find out something's going on next door that a staff member gets to approve rather than councillors or this table?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So the process itself is set up that there's still a public meeting. It's just a commissioner's delegated authority meeting. There is still an opportunity for the public to participate in this process. The notification process would mimic that of a minor variance application. So again, it would go to, I believe, properties within 60 meters of the subject property. And currently it's a 10-day notice period, but given the comments from the previous councillor, that might be looked at in terms of extending that for additional opportunity for providing comments. But there is still a public process where people can, the members of the public can participate. It's just that the final decision-making body is no longer the Committee of Adjustment. It's just the, in this regard, it's the Commissioner of Development Services or their designate.
Okay, yeah, thanks, I appreciate that. As long as there's some process, because I think we've heard loud and clear that residents don't like it when they don't get a say in what happens in their neighborhoods, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara, for that very important point. Councillor Hazardale, are you back?
I am, thank you, Councillor O'Meara, for that, because those comments. So if we approve it as written tonight, are we then agreeing to your recommendation or your comments around mirroring the minor variances, or are you going to be adjusting that based on the comments you've received?
Councillor, if they change the 10 days to 2 weeks, would that satisfy the issue?
Are you prepared to change it to 2 weeks?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that's an appropriate change. And if council wanted to provide direction to that effect, that would give us greater clarity. Thank you.
So Mayor Burton, what do you need to make sure that?
We'll just add item 8, that the notice to the public should be 2 weeks.
Thank you.
All right. I sense that we might be at a point where we would like to pass that with that addition. Somebody like to give a motion? Oh, sorry. Councillor Adams, you're willing to include the, perfect. Councillor Adams' motion now includes the 2-week notice. Any objection? There being no objection, that carries. Congratulations, everybody. That ends all our public matters and brings us to our confidential discussion item. Council will be going into a closed session as this matter may be considered in the absence of the public under section 239, sub 2 of the Municipal Act, because it deals with litigation, potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And it considers advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including the communications necessary for that purpose. When we finish, we'll come back into public session, but only for the purpose of ending the meeting. So so anyway, that's my summation of the situation. I need a mover for this motion to go into camera. Councillor Giddings, thank you. Any objection? There being no objection, thank you, Councillor Giddings. Your motion succeeds. I'm declaring well, it's 9, I'm going to call it 9:40. Before I call a recess, which I think is overdue, let me just ask if there's somebody on council who might like to move going past the hour at this moment. Because when you're in camera, you can't. I'll take that motion from Councillor Elgar, because it's very significant that he would move it. And I'll ask if there's any objection to that motion. Thank you. That means that it carries, but it was close. All right, we're going to have a 10-minute recess. All right, I'm calling council back into public session. Council has met in a session closed to the public under the permissions of Section 239 of the Municipal Act, because what we discussed deals with litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Advice that is subject to client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. We have a motion by Councillor Longo that the report from the legal department dated May 15th be received, that the solicitor be authorized to proceed in accordance with direction provided by council in closed session, and that the notice provisions in sections 5.5 sub 4 and 8 sub 3 of the procedural bylaw 2020-11 be waived to permit the town clerk to schedule a special council meeting should tight timelines require quick decisions on this matter. Is there any objection to Councillor Longo's motion? Madam Clerk, there's no objection and it carries unanimously. Could I have a motion to rise and report to council? Councillor Longo, you were first off the mark. Any objection? That's carried. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on the consent items 4.1, .2, and .3, the public hearing items 6.1, .2, .3, .4, and .5, confidential matter 8.1, and I need a mover and seconder for the report. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Shi. Any objection? There being none, that carries. Thank you. Is there any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Very well. Could I have a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws? Councillor McNeese, Councillor Grant, thank you. Is there any objection to the bylaws motion? There being none, the bylaws are considered read and passed. And that ends the meeting. Thank you, everybody. It's been great working with you.